Chapter 295. So-called wall reflection was both a method of cultivation for Buddhists as well as a method of punishment. 3 years of wall reflection was 3 years of house arrest. During these 3 years, they could not communicate with anyone, could not move about freely, and could not have any form of entertainment. It was even more terrifying than being imprisoned. The dullness was enough to drive a regular person mad. It was also a great test of the mind for Buddhist disciples. This talented but rather impetuous disciple had always been the one-thought master's favorite disciple. In the past, the one-thought master would definitely be overjoyed if he volunteered to face the wall in the cliffside grotto, but at a time like this, he probably felt like giving up on himself. The more talented they were, the easier it was for them to become dejected and depressed compared to regular people once they suffered setbacks. Have you really thought it through? Yes. Mind enlightenment lowered his head deeply into the ground. Thinking back to all the years he had spent in the Ansrava temple, all of his pride and status had vanished with this word. He was filled with endless disappointment and sorrow. Tears fell like rain as he sobbed aloud. The one-thought master rubbed his head. Don't cry, don't cry. This might be good for you. Master, I've embarrassed you. Mind enlightenment hugged the one-thought master's leg like a wronged child. He had returned to the time when he first joined the Ansrava temple, and he was still a little novice monk. No, you've always been my best disciple. You have to keep it together. The one-thought master could not help but redden. The monks in the temple all shed tears as well. Their first senior brother had many problems, but he had always taken care of them. Now that he was going to face the wall for 3 years, they felt sad too. Li Qingshan rubbed his nose and thought, why do I feel like Little and I are the bad guys? After crying, mind enlightenment seemed to ease up a lot. He bid farewell to his master and junior brothers and went to the cliffside grotto by himself to cultivate. From beginning to end, he never glanced at Little N again. That child made him feel fear. This fear did not come from the strike that Little N had almost killed him. Instead, it came from the strike that had cut through the Vajra monk's spade. Although it had only lasted for a short moment, he felt a bone-chilling coldness that suppressed his power and will. His indestructible Vajra monk's spade had snapped under that power, or in other words, his will. The one-thought master watched mind enlightenment leave before turning around, looking at Little, and he opened his mouth, but didn't know what to say. Should he reprimand him? Should I praise him? But no matter which one it was, it didn't seem right. Only one thing was certain. He wouldn't be the child's master for long. You've mastered the first level of the Vajra subdual art. Yes, master. The crowd burst into an uproar. The monks looked at each other at a loss. They could see their own expressions on each other's faces. The Vajra subduing demon art was taught in the 100 schools of thought at the prefectural level. 1_1 could already be considered a secret and powerful technique. At the peak of cultivation, one could form a Vajra relic, just like the Taoist golden core realm. Little and suddenly asked, Master, are you afraid? The corner of the one-thought master's eye twitched. He chanted the Buddha's name several times, stopping only after quite a while. He took out his primary disciple's tablet. He placed it in Shaoen's palm. From today onwards, you are now the chief disciple of my Buddha school. Martial prowess alone isn't enough. You also need to be profound in the Buddhist Dharma and be able to withstand the doubts of your junior brothers and sisters. Little said, Yes, master. The one-thought master wanted to give him a few more words of advice, but he ended up sighing gently. Don't forget to uphold the Buddha's will to love your fellow disciples. You shouldn't have used that strike on your fellow disciples. He was reluctant to let little N take up the position of primary disciple right now. But who else in the Ansrava temple possessed the ability to replace Mind Enlightenment's position? Even if they could, how long could they sit there for? Was it half a year or 3 months? As a result, little N became the youngest primary disciple in the history of the 100 schools of thought of the Clear River Prefecture. If it were not for Li Qingshan's existence, he would be the primary disciple with the lowest cultivation in history. Little N wanted to retort, but Li Qingshan pressed down on her shoulder and shot her a glance. The one thought master is right. Why don't you thank master? Little N said obediently, Thank you, master. The one thought master frowned and said sternly, Li Qingshan, before little N reaches the first layer of the Guardian King's scripture of demon subdual, no one is allowed to disturb her. That's my order. So why do you keep pestering him? His beloved disciple had lost his status as the primary disciple and was sent to prison, so how could he not be angry? He was unable to lash out at little, and so he obviously went to find the troublemaker Li Qingshan instead. The one thought master, the disciples of the 100 schools. We're of the same breath and branch, sharing weal and woe. Can't he even come to Ansrava Island to find someone? Before Li Qingshan could say anything, a voice rang out from the direction of the forest of pagodas. Turning around, he saw Lu Chuanfeng riding over on a huge white crane. After holding hands with Sun Fubai, he even took out some alcohol and dishes, drinking a few cups together. When he received the news, he paled in fright and rushed over in a hurry. Right now, Li Qingshan was like a golden ingot to him. If anything happened to him, the School of Novels would probably be crippled. By then, he would not even have a place to cry. Master, Mind Enlightenment has publicly humiliated our School of Novels, harming our friendship with the Academy. He even tried to harm us over a slight disagreement. So why are you blaming us instead? Lu Chuanfeng leapt down from White Crane Mountain and landed before Li Qingshan, clasping his hands. When Li Qingshan saw how his wide sleeves fluttered in the wind and his green robes drifted about, he really did seem rather graceful, which was the first time his opinion of him had changed slightly. The one thought master happened to be rather infuriated, but when he saw how Lu Chuanfeng was bold enough to make a fuss before him, he widened his eyes. There was no need for him to unleash his Guardian King's avatar. A great, dignified pressure crushed down heavily. Lu Chuanfeng bowed deeply. I'm sorry. It's all my School of Novels' fault. Please forgive me, Master. Damn disciple, why don't you apologize to the Master? Li Qingshan grinned and resisted the urge to slap him across the mouth. With a school leader like that, was there any need to worry about the School of Novels not being crippled? In the end, the matter was left unsettled. Li Qingshan took little and back to Cloud Wisp Island for a visit. Along the way, Lu Chuanfeng tried to approach him several times, but he avoided him. He did not want little and to be influenced by someone like him. Returning to Cloud Wisp Island, they arrived in the bamboo courtyard. There was already someone waiting there. The leader of the School of Confucianism, Lu Chongqing, stood with his hands behind his back, listening to the rustling of the trees with his eyes closed. A while later, he opened his eyes just now. It's been so many years, but the scenery here is still so beautiful. It's just a pity. Lu Chuanfeng obviously knew what he meant by pity, but all he could do was smile dryly and bow. School leader Lu, long time no see. However, Lu Chongqing did not seem to see him. He said to Li Qingshan, honestly, Li Qingshan, what are your conditions for leaving the School of Novels? Let's hear it. He did not treat Lu Chuanfeng as a human at all. Lu Chuanfeng's smile stiffened, but he dared not show any displeasure. He looked at Li Qingshan for help, almost pleading. However, Li Qingshan did not look at him. He said to Lu Chongqing in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. Sir Lu, can I join another school if I leave the School of Novels? Lu Chuanfeng's face was ashen. Lu Chongqing shook his head. No, even if you leave, you can only leave as a disciple of the School of Novels. However, I can recommend you to a very impressive sect for cultivation, the Pine Sough Courtyard of the Tianhu Mountain. It's quite renowned across the entire Green Province. The head of the courtyard is already a golden core master who has undergone 2 heavenly tribulations. You'll have a much better future there than in the 100 schools of thought of the Clear River Prefecture. Lu Chuanfeng had already lost all hope. No one could turn down something as good as this. Li Qingshan said, Apologies. Thank you for your kind intentions, school leader, but please forgive me for being unable to accept it. Lu Chongqing frowned. What conditions do you have? Feel free to tell me. Li Qingshan smiled a little and held her hand. No matter what conditions you have, I won't accept them. We can't be separated. Lu Chongqing said, Do you know that there's a saying that it's better to forget about each other than to help each other in difficult times? All good things must come to an end. Separation is only a matter of time. If you stay here, she'll leave you behind very soon with her cultivation speed. By then, what will you do? If you go to the Pine Sough Courtyard, you might be able to see her again in the future. Or are you trying to use her for your own benefits? Be it patient guidance or clever words, Lu Zhongqing's every word struck at a vital point. Li Qingshan was unable to maintain his smile. In the end, he let out a gentle sigh. Perhaps you're right. Little Anne's heart tightened. Lu Chongqing smiled. However, I've already heard far too much about the great principles of this world. Right now, I just want to follow my heart. My heart tells me that I want to be with her. To be honest, I don't believe in forever, but the longer, the better. He shrugged his shoulders. Until death do us part. The wind rustled, the bamboo forest swayed, and the shadows swayed. Lu Chongqing had already left. He believed that he had a good eye for people, but when such a man said such words, it meant that his beliefs were as firm as a boulder, unshakable. Lu Chuanfeng said excitedly, Thank you, thank you. The School of Novels had escaped a calamity. Li Qingshan said, I didn't do it for you. Lu Chuanfeng said, Then thank you anyway. I'll go prepare lunch to celebrate you officially joining the School of Novels. Li Qingshan said, It's only 9 o'clock now. But Lu Chuanfeng had already floated into the bamboo house, humming a song. He saw little Anne's big eyes rolling with tears. Why are you so moved? I'm doing it for myself. Didn't you hear? I'm using you. Idiot! Li Qingshan rubbed her little head, little, and wiped away her tears and took out a glistening pill from her 100 treasures pouch, passing it to Li Qingshan. This was a Buddhist pill the One Thought Master had given to Little, and judging from its glow, it was not as good as a pill like the virtue accumulation pill, but it was not too far off. Li Qingshan smiled bitterly. I'm just saying, you better keep it for yourself. Little N insisted. She seemed like she was going to cry if he did not accept it. Li Qingshan rubbed his nose. All he could do was accept it. He felt strange, so he dismissed these thoughts. Let's go. I'll take you somewhere nice. In the depths of the courtyard, in the pavilion above the lake, the rocking chair swayed gently. Li Qingshan held her in his arms, smelling the faint fragrance of sandalwood on her. He stroked her silky hair gently as he gazed at the lake. Her eyes were closed. She seemed to be asleep. I'm doing it for myself. He was not lying. He did not just have the noble thought of taking care of her and protecting her. With her by his side, he was finally no longer alone. Chapter 296, On the Dragon Snake Lake, a flying shuttle glided across the water surface and arrived outside Cloudwisp Island. The leader was a muscular man with a full beard. On his left was a young man with a dark complexion, and on his right was a tall young man with bulging eyes. They were all wearing navy blue clothes, and the word MO was engraved on their waist tags. They were the three people who had entered the zombie cave with Li Qingshan in the past and killed the zombie Taoist. Hao Pingyong put away the flying shuttle and sized up the quiet Cloudwisp Island that seemed to be deserted. He frowned and asked, "Did you hear me wrong? He really joined the School of Novels?" Zhang Lanqing said, "That's right, it's here. He's already famous in the 100 schools of thought." He Isher said, "He's a famous fool, isn't he? He actually dares to insult the Taoist family head. He must be tired of living." Hao Pingyong glared at him. Zhang Lanqing hurriedly said, "Isher, how can you say that? Qingshan saved us in the past." He Isher said with bulging eyes, "He's just using us to complete the mission. If it weren't for him, we wouldn't have gone underground, and Jin Yuan and Jin Bao wouldn't have died." "Then what are you still doing here? Why don't you scram?" Hao Pingyong roared. Ever since he came back from the zombie cave, he felt that He Isher was a despicable person and had distanced himself from him. This time, it was Zhang Lanqing who persuaded him. Remembering that the three of them had gone on an adventure together in the past, it was just now that Zhang Lanqing called him along. He Isher tilted his head and didn't say a word, but his face was filled with stubbornness. Hao Pingyong coldly snorted and strode forward. Zhang Lanqing sighed and followed. He Isher also moved his feet. He wasn't here to thank Li Qingshan for saving his life. Instead, he was here to see Li Qingshan's miserable state. The School of Novels was really a joke. Qingshan, Qingshan. The familiar roar traveled through the bamboo forest and into Li Qingshan's ears through his xinchi. When Li Qingshan walked out of the courtyard, Hao Pingyong was walking out of the bamboo forest. When he saw Li Qingshan, he was pleasantly surprised. He quickly walked over and patted Li Qingshan's shoulder. He said happily, "You really are here." Li Qingshan said, "Brother Hao, long time no see." And Zhang Yef equals. Book C Pavilion. Web brother, he. Huh. The 6th layer of qi. Refining. How did you train? It hasn't even been a year. Hao Pingyong's current cultivation level was the same as before, still in the 6th layer of qi refining. The last 4 meridians of the 8 extraordinary meridians were already extremely slow and difficult to cultivate. When he heard that Li Qingshan had gone to the School of Novels on Cloudwisp Island, he rushed over to look for him. However, he did not know that Li Qingshan was already in the 6th layer of the aura refining realm. Zhang Lanqing was also surprised. Just like before, he was still in the 5th layer of qi refinement and was preparing to condense his sea of qi to break through to the 6th layer. Li Qingshan's cultivation speed. It was astonishingly fast. The one who was most shocked was He Isher. After returning from the zombie cave, he had made another breakthrough in his cultivation, reaching the 5th level of qi refining. When he came to see Li Qingshan, he was full of confidence. He was prepared to look down on him and admire his downtrodden appearance to find some balance. Who would have thought that the insignificant 2nd level qi practitioner would break through to the 4th level in less than a year? Now that he had reached the 6th layer, he found it increasingly difficult to find balance in his heart. Hao Pingyong turned around and saw Little and standing quietly under the eaves. He also had a deep impression of this beautiful child. Isn't this Little? And were his eyes playing tricks on him? How did Little and also become a 6th layer qi refining? Zhang Lanqing said, "Senior apprentice brother, you were busy making cannons in the workshop. Didn't you hear about this? Little and is a heavenly meridians prodigy. She reached the third layer in 4 hours. During the attribute test, she even attracted the attention of the heads of the various families. But now she's only in the 6th layer. Could the rumors be wrong? Li Qingshan briefly explained what had happened. How Pingyang and Zhang Lanqing did not know what to say. She cultivated the 1st layer of the Vajra demon subduing art in one night and defeated the top disciple of the school of Buddhism. Enlightenment. If these words had not come from Li Qingshan, they would not have believed it. They looked at Little and in surprise and saw that there was indeed a token of the top disciple of the school of Buddhism hanging on her waist. How Pingyang grinned and said, "I seem to have met an extraordinary person. Should I greet her?" When ordinary disciples saw the top disciples of the various families, they had to greet them and call them senior apprentice brother, let alone a major family like the school of Buddhism. In Zhang Lanqing's memory, the top disciple of the school of Buddhism, monk enlightenment, was an extremely arrogant person. He really could not connect the top disciple of the school of Buddhism with Little, and Li Qingshan said, "Brother Hao, you must be joking. Don't just stand here. Please come in." When they arrived at the hall, they invited the 3 to take a seat. Little and went to find a tea set and served them tea. The 3 hurriedly stood up and took it. How Pingyang did not care about trifles, so he did not mind, but Zhang Lanqing and he Isher felt flattered. On the other hand, Li Qingshan was calm. After Little and served the tea, she sat beside him obediently, just like before. He Isher was depressed, be it Li Qingshan or Little, and they had both reached a much higher realm than him. Jealousy rose in his heart. The heavens were so unfair. He had cultivated for so many years, but he could not compare to Li Qingshan in a year or Little and in a day and a night. After a while, Zhang Lanqing could not help but sigh. The school of Buddhism is fine. It's a good place to go. Qingshan, with your talent, it's a pity to enter the school of novels. Li Qingshan sipped his tea and said nonchalantly, "There's nothing bad about the school of novels." How Pingyang said loudly, "That's right. What's bad about it? The environment here is perfect for cultivation. Do you have to learn the techniques of the school of novels just because you want to enter? With your talent, Qingshan, you will definitely reach foundation establishment in the future. You can find any good cultivation technique then." What Brother Hao says makes sense. Li Qingshan smiled. How Pingyang seemed crude, but he was actually very meticulous. Moreover, his concern and encouragement were even more touching. Zhang Lanqing was also a steady and good person, only he Isher had a strange temperament. He stared with wide eyes, thinking about something. How Pingyang changed the topic. "Have you chosen your course?" Li Qingshan said, "Not yet. I heard there are many courses, but I have no idea what to choose." In the 100 schools of thought, from Contention Island to the various islands, there would be classes. From artifact refinement and alchemy to history books, there would be classes. Disciples of other schools could come and listen. However, most new disciples would focus on learning the techniques of their own schools when they first entered the 100 schools of thought. Since Li Qingshan was not willing to learn the techniques of the school of novels, these courses were extremely important and also his goal. How Pingyang said, "That's perfect. We'll help you choose. There are many ways to learn." Lanqing, do you have a course list with you? Yes. Zhang Lanqing hurriedly took out a piece of paper from his 100 treasures pouch. There were many small words printed on it. Each word was neatly written and of the same size. It was obviously done by a machine and not by a human hand. Li Qingshan looked down and saw the names of the courses written on it. There were things like divination and divination, identification of spiritual herbs, Yiwu Qi breathing method, and so on. They were arranged according to the date. There were over 10 days of courses and the time and place of the classes, as well as the names of the instructors and professors. Apart from these courses that were directly related to cultivation, there were also courses that taught poetry, calligraphy, etiquette, and even the appreciation of music. There were too many to count. This was all the knowledge that Li Qingshan needed the most. It could assist him in understanding everything about the cultivation community. He was eager to learn too, but with so many courses, he really had no idea how to choose from if he really had to choose from them. Moreover, he noticed that some of the courses were marked with prices. For example, the courses at the School of Music required a few spirit stones to attend. Hao Pingyang said, "Some of the courses are considered the secrets of the schools, so we naturally can't teach them to outsiders for free. Besides, the professors also need to eat. But since you're the chief disciple, it's easy. You can learn all the courses for free." Could it be that there are secrets in the School of Music's courses? They also charge spirit stones? Li Qingshan asked curiously. Hao Pingyang smiled and said, "The School of Music is mostly female. If they don't charge spirit stones, there will be a lot of men going to every class to fool around." He winked at Li Qingshan. "If you have time, you can go take a look. Maybe you'll even get married. Anyway, it doesn't cost spirit stones. It's really enviable." Li Qingshan smiled and said, "Do qi practitioners lack women? Can't they be found outside? I came to the 100 schools of thought to cultivate, not to go on a blind date." Hao Pingyang said, "You're wrong. How can women in the mortal world compare to the charm of female cultivators?" Li Qingshan couldn't help but think of Gu Yenying and realized that Hao Pingyang was right. Who didn't have a father and a mother? There were only so many combinations of facial features. Gu Yenying didn't look any fairer than a woman in the mortal world, but her every frown and smile could really move people's hearts. This had nothing to do with the art of seduction. As the saying goes, the appearance changes according to the heart. If there's something inside, there must be something outside. The word temperament was no longer illusory. At least the word qi was real. However, Li Qingshan didn't agree with Hao Pingyang's suggestion. If you spend all your time on women, can you still be considered a qualified cultivator? Hao Pingyang said, "The path of cultivation is long. If you walk alone, won't you be lonely? If you have a cultivation partner, you'll be in a good mood. Perhaps you'll be able to go further. There are quite a few partners like that in the 100 schools of thought, such as the one beside you." Li Qingshan looked at Zhang Lanqing in surprise. He had never thought he would have a partner too. Zhang Lanqing's dark face blushed slightly in embarrassment. Hao Pingyang said, "When we go out for fun, this guy never follows us. That's what I like about him." "Ha! Honest people don't lose out." "Brother Hao, don't you have one?" Li Qingshan asked with a smile. Temperament was also suitable for men. Hao Pingyang was not exactly handsome, but he was forthright and generous, which made him extraordinarily charming. Zhang Lanqing immediately said, "Originally, there were people who took a liking to senior brother, but he spends most of his free time in the workshop. As soon as he leaves the academy, he spends his time drinking. Who can stand it?" Hao Pingyang laughed aloud. "I'm too busy with my own matters. So how can I be in the mood to deal with them? Then why are you still trying to persuade me?" Li Qingshan broke into laughter. The 100 schools of thought was rather similar to the universities of his past life. It was free and open, but it was even more so. Here, it was fine even if you were unwilling to attend a single lesson. As long as you let the leader of the school know, no one would care if you wanted to travel for a few months. You just had to hand in spiritual stones every year. As for the disciples of the 100 schools of thought, they were not like the university students from his past life either. They were true prodigies. Chapter 297. Hao Pingyang said, Even if I don't have the intention, listening to their music is a rare pleasure. Booksy Pavilion, net. Of course, I won't miss this opportunity. If there's a chance, it might really be as you say. Li Qingshan licked his lips. The two men looked at each other and smiled. Zhang Lanqing said, "Don't say any more. There are children here. Hurry up and choose your courses. Have you decided on your cultivation method?" Li Qingshan nodded. "Yes, the Gui water condensation method. I won't change it." "That's good. Do you have any hobbies? Talismans, formations, or alchemy? Which one do you want to learn?" "I want to learn about all of them. Brother Zhang, do you have any recommendations?" Li Qingshan saw that there were over a dozen courses related to alchemy on the list. The names and professors of each course were different. He had no idea how he should choose. Hao Pingyang said, "You've asked the right person. Lan Qing has attended almost all of these courses. He's famous for his diligence." Zhang Lanqing smiled modestly. "I'm also an amateur, but I should learn about them all. Although it's an outer path, it's good for cultivation. But I can't be too distracted. It's best to focus on one, at most two. If there's too many, it won't be good. If it's possible, I'd like to learn all of them. But I'm not in a hurry. Right now, I want to focus on alchemy. Formations and alchemy will be supplementary." Li Qingshan smiled. He had a long journey ahead of him. Naturally, he had to make ample preparations. Zhang Lanqing agreed. Alchemy is indeed the best. Almost all the schools have alchemy classes. There are different levels and emphasis on different things. But the best are still the professors from the School of Taoism and the School of Medicine. "Qingshan, do you have any foundation?" Li Qingshan said, "Honestly, I've only learned how to make a batch of qi-gathering pills from someone, and the results were average." Zhang Lanqing said, "Then it seems that we should start from the basics. It just so happens that the academy entrance examinations have just ended, and there are many new classes like this." Then Zhang Lanqing recommended a few courses related to alchemy to Li Qingshan, explaining the pros and cons of each course in detail, including which professor was impatient and taught extremely fast. If one's brain was slow, it would be easy for them to keep up. Which professor was slow and liked to drag things out. In the end, he decided on a course for the School of Medicine called Basic Alchemy Techniques. There would be a course every few days for several months. This was exactly what Li Qingshan wanted. He had just fallen out with the head of the Taoist school. If he were to attend the lecture now, even if the sloppy Taoist could tolerate him, his disciples would probably cause trouble for him. He just wanted to cultivate in peace in the 100 schools of thought and improve his cultivation. He didn't want to compete with others. Then, Zhang Lanqing helped Li Qingshan choose a few courses related to talismans, formations, and forging artifacts. He gave Li Qingshan a simple understanding of the history and general knowledge of these subjects before deciding on his interests and direction. Among them, Hao Pingyang specially recommended an artifact forging course from the School of Moism. He said he would take Li Qingshan to visit the divine mechanism island of the School of Moism when the time came. After choosing these core subjects, Li Qingshan discovered that he still had plenty of time. He could choose a few subjects that he was interested in to fill up his time, such as going to the School of Music to listen to some tunes. Apart from that, is there anything else I need to take note of? Zhang Lanqing said. Then there's choosing missions. Missions? Hao Pingyang said. When we went to kill the zombie Taoist last time, it was a mission. After we returned, we received quite a lot of spiritual stones as a reward. As it turned out, the disciples had to find their own way around basic necessities in the 100 schools of thought. Apart from a few outstanding disciples, they had to find their own way around pills for cultivation. It was not as easy as it was in sections. However, They would not order their disciples around like sex either, forcing them to do this and that. Instead, it would be like the Hawkwolf Guard, where they would directly set a price. If they were willing to do it, they could earn spiritual stones and pills. I don't really lack spiritual stones and pills right now. Li Qingshan had only used up a small portion of the resources he had obtained underground. There was no need for him to waste his time on this. Zhang Lanqing shook his head. These missions are closely related to your cultivation. It's not just for earning spiritual stones. Book C Pavilion, Web, what do you mean? For example, the most common alchemy missions. You can accept them as long as you know how to refine qi gathering pills. The Academy will prepare the materials for you, and all you need to do is hand over a certain number of qi gathering pills within a certain amount of time, and you'll complete the mission. I see. Li Qingshan immediately understood that if he was skilled at alchemy, he could earn some extra pills from these missions. However, if he was bad at alchemy, he would have to work for nothing, and he might even lose spiritual stones. As a new alchemist, the chances of him losing money were clearly quite high. However, even if he lost money, he could still accumulate a tremendous amount of experience in alchemy rapidly. Otherwise, just gathering the random spiritual herbs would take quite a lot of effort. He could not help but admire the minds of the people who set up these missions. Their methods of exploitation were just too brilliant, Zhang Lanqing said. Another example would be the mission we did last time. It basically provided you with actual battle experience. There are also some missions that test your technique. You should familiarize yourself with the Academy first. You can visit the Secretariat Hall on Contention Island when the time comes. The three of them chatted and laughed. Time passed extremely quickly. Before they knew it, the sun had already risen to the middle of the sky. Isher said nothing. He sat to one side, glancing at Li Qingshan from time to time. Who knew what he was thinking? Suddenly, Li Qingshan stopped talking and gazed at the bamboo forest outside the courtyard. Originally, he thought Lu Chuanfeng had returned, but all he saw was a handsome man in black clothes emerging from the bamboo forest and making his way towards the courtyard. How Pingyong became stern. It was another primary disciple. He was the primary disciple of the school of legalism, Hua Sengzan. Why is he here? Zhang Lanqing thought. I suddenly remember that Li Qingshan is a Hawkwolf Guard. Don't tell me he's here to denounce me? After all, Li Qingshan has joined the School of Novels. Even if he's the primary disciple, it won't be glorious. Isher's stiff face immediately lit up with a smile. The three of them dared not slight this influential figure. They bowed and said, "Greetings, senior brother." Hua Sengzan nodded slightly in return. He glanced at Little and beside Li Qingshan. He was well informed, so he already knew about what had happened on Ansrava Island. If it were not for Wang Pushi's assurance, even he would have struggled to believe it. Then when he saw her cultivation at the 6th layer, he sighed inside. Whoever dared to call themselves a genius before her would be shameless. He cut right to the chase. You turned down Prefect Lu? Li Qingshan said, yes. Hua Sengzan sighed with a smile. There's nothing I can do about that. However, Old Wang told me to pass on a message to you. What message? Hua Sengzan turned around and saw Lu Chuanfeng descending from the sky on a white crane with a lunchbox in one hand. He said, I'll tell you later. Li Qingshan immediately understood that the message was obviously related to Lu Chuanfeng, and it was clearly not something good. However, it was not easy for him to maintain such a demeanor even when facing Lu Chuanfeng, who was like a street rat. Qingshan, I'm back. The white crane disappeared as soon as it landed. Lu Chuanfeng stood still. He was slightly surprised to see so many people there. When he saw Hua Sengzan standing there, he took the initiative to bow and said, So, It's Commander Hua. Your presence brings light to my humble abode. Please forgive me for not coming out to greet you. Although both of them were in the 10th layer of Qi practitioner, and Lu Chuanfeng was the head of the school, their statuses were not just one level apart. On the other hand, Hao Pingyang and the other two bowed respectfully. Although the school of novels was despised by others, a 10th layer Qi practitioner was not someone they could look down on. Hua Sengzan returned the bow. He did not show any disdain, nor did he pretend to be respectful. He looked around and said, "This place is so quiet that even I want to move in." Lu Chuanfeng said, "As long as Commander is willing, I'll be waiting for you at any time. There are plenty of rooms here." The two of them chatted for a while before Lu Chuanfeng said, "It's getting late. Get ready to eat. Today, I've asked the 100 Flavors restaurant to put in a lot of effort to prepare a feast. My senior brother will be here soon. Qingshan, you've met him before." Hua Sengzan said, "Is it elder son? Then I'll have to ask for a cup of wine." He looked at Li Qingshan and said, "Consider it my congratulations to you for joining the School of Novels." Li Qingshan smiled. As expected, Sun Fubai was also a disciple of the School of Novels. For Hua Sengzan to call him elder son, it could be seen that as long as one had a good character, whether one was a disciple of the School of Novels or not, one would be respected. Lu Chuanfeng then casually invited Hao Pingyang and the other two to stay. He Isher was a little tempted. Not only could he get a free meal, but he could also get to know the top disciple of the School of Legalism. Where else could he get such a good deal? However, Hao Pingyang refused. The difference in their statuses and cultivation levels was too big, so it would not be convenient to eat at the same table. "We still have some matters to attend to, so we won't disturb you. Qingshan, I'll treat you to a drink when you have the time." Li Qingshan quickened his steps and caught up with them. He gave a sea of Qi pill to Zhang Lanqing. "Thank you for the trouble, Brother Zhang." Zhang Lanqing quickly refused. "How can I accept this?" Hao Pingyang said, "Since I'm giving it to you, just accept it. What about mine?" Li Qingshan said, "It's not like you're condensing your sea of Qi. I'll treat you to a drink in the future." "Ha, you must be joking. If I say it's my treat, then it's my treat." Zhang Lanqing expressed his gratitude sincerely. Right now, he needed a sea of Qi pill the most. With this sea of Qi pill, he would have a 30% more confidence in condensing his sea of Qi. It was truly a timely help. He Isher watched from the side with envy. He was also in the 5th layer of the Qi refining realm. So how could he not want the sea of Qi pill? Unfortunately, Li Qingshan did not even spare him a glance. After the few of them left, Hua Sengzan asked, "That tall and thin person just now, was he Isher, right?" Li Qingshan asked, "How did you know?" "I'll tell you later." It was impossible for Hua Sengzan to personally inquire about such a trivial matter. However, he knew that among the Mo disciples Li Qingshan knew there was a person named He Isher, who harbored ill intentions towards him. Hua Sengzan could guess who He Isher was just by looking at the three of them. Li Qingshan said, "So mysterious." At this moment, a few women suddenly appeared out of thin air in the courtyard. Every one of them was a first-class beauty with exquisite features and excellent figures. They took out the food and wine from the lunchboxes and placed them on the table. Their clothes were also very revealing. As they moved, they would occasionally reveal their naked bodies. Chapter 298. They're all small paths. Book C Pavilion. Lu Chuanfeng didn't seem to realize it at all. Instead, he spoke proudly. He even glanced at Li Qingshan, and when he saw the latter's surprised expression, he became even more delighted. His goal was to lead Li Qingshan onto the path of no return to the School of Novels. Li Qingshan was indeed sizing up the women. Their voluptuous breasts and buttocks, indeed, had the ability to attract the attention of every man. However, that wasn't all he was looking at. Although the women all had smiles on their faces, their eyes were dull and lifeless. They were like those computer-generated beauties on game posters from his previous life, or some sort of exquisite blow-up doll. Of course, this was much more realistic. They were probably like the characters in Lu Chuanfeng's erotic novels. Who knew? They might even perform well in bed. But what use was that? He might as well find a brothel and have a good time. At least, it would be with a living person. Li Qingshan felt a deep sense of sorrow. No wonder the school of novels was looked down upon so much. He was always using the school of novels to do such lowly things. It was so despicable that even he, the first seat of the school of novels, wanted to give him a few punches, not to mention that little and was watching curiously from the side. Li Qingshan said in a low voice, "Lu Chuanfeng, you'd better stop before you go too far." Lu Chuanfeng was also annoyed. How dare he be so rude to him in front of an outsider? Did he really think that he was a fake clan head? However, when he met Li Qingshan's furious eyes, he immediately recalled the slap that was as sharp as a knife this morning. His puffed-up chest shrank back, and he said embarrassedly, "We're all scholars. Can't we just talk things out? Look at you. You've made Commander Hua laugh at you. Hurry up and eat." Li Qingshan was used to seeing people fall out with each other over the slightest disagreement, so when he saw Lu Chuanfeng acting like this, he felt very uncomfortable, as if he had done something wrong. He was a person who bullied the strong, not the weak. A 10th layer Qi practitioner like Lu Chuanfeng was probably hard to find under the heavens. Hua Sengzan shook his head. It was rare for a dignified family head to end up like this. Coincidentally, Sun Fubai walked in from outside the door. When he saw the illusory women, he frowned. "Junior brother, what are you doing?" Lu Chuanfeng opened his mouth. What nonsense! Hurry up and retract your spell." Sun Fubai's snow-white eyebrows were almost knitted together. This junior brother of his could be considered a talent in cultivation. It was already not easy for him to reach the 10th layer of the Qi practitioner when the school of novels was in such a decline. However, sometimes his brain was not very sharp, and he did not know how to pay attention to the situation when he spoke or did things. Lu Chuanfeng quickly dispersed the illusory women. With a clatter, the bowls and chopsticks in their hands fell to the ground. He quickly picked them up and conjured a stream of water to wash them clean. He placed the bowls and chopsticks on the table, frowning and pursing his lips like a wife who had been wronged. Hua Sengzan cupped his hands and said, "Elder son, long time no see." There was a hint of friendliness and sincerity in his tone. "What elder son? Just call me Uncle Fu." Sun Fubai grabbed Li Qingshan's hand. "Young man, we meet again. I didn't expect you to really come here. I didn't expect you to be from the school of novels either, Uncle Fu." Li Qingshan seemed to be implying something. This old man's plans were really deep. Sun Fubai said, "Sai, you've seen the situation. The school of novels is currently in a bit of a slump. You won't blame me for asking you to fill in these 3 words, right?" Li Qingshan said, "Of course not. If it weren't for you, Uncle Fu, I'm afraid I would have nowhere to go now. Although this place is a bit down, it's quiet and suitable for cultivation. Let's eat," Lu Chuanfeng said softly. Sun Fubai raised his hand and said, "Please." At the banquet, there was a round of toasting and toasting. Although little and didn't say anything and Lu Chuanfeng couldn't say anything, Hua Sengzan and Sun Fubai were present, so there was no awkward silence. With the beautiful scenery of the bamboo forest in front of them, it could be said that both the host and the guest were enjoying themselves. In the afternoon, Li Qingshan followed Hua Sengzan to the shore of Dragon Snake Lake. There was a vast expanse of mist that stretched as far as the eye could see. Hua Sengzan organized his words and tactfully informed Li Qingshan. Wang Pushi's warning was so tactful that if Li Qingshan didn't listen carefully, he would think that Wang Pushi was encouraging him. Li Qingshan said, "Even if he didn't say it, I wouldn't have wasted my time doing this. By the way, what's up with He Isher?" Hua Sengzan explained the whole story and how He Isher hinted that Li Qingshan was the murderer during his questioning. Li Qingshan was furious when he heard that. What a scoundrel! I've saved his life time and time again, but not only is he not grateful, he even dares to accuse me. No wonder he doesn't dare to talk to me just now. He wasn't a magnanimous person. It wasn't in his character to not take revenge. He had to find an opportunity to teach He Isher a lesson to vent his anger. Hua Sengzan reminded him, "In the 100 schools of thought, you can't use weapons. If you kill someone here, no one can protect you." Li Qingshan said, "Just put a bag over his head and beat him up to vent your anger. Do it cleanly and don't leave any evidence," Hua Sengzan said with a smile. Li Qingshan smiled as well. That doesn't sound like something a disciple of legalism should say. Li Qingshan, as the Scarlet Wolf commander of the Clear River Prefecture, "I'm informing you that you've been arrested. Prepare to be punished." Hua Sengzan became stern before suddenly breaking into a smile. Does that sound like it? His expression changed constantly, like when the ice on a lake cracked and the gentle spring water surged over. Before he knew it, the ice had melted and turned into gentle ripples. Li Qingshan could not help but think of a saying he had read in his past life. There are no girls in the world who can resist a smile from Jiangfeng, and there are no heroes who can resist a gentle strike from Yan Nantian. Hua Sengzan possessed the legendary bearing of Jiangfeng. Looking at himself, he could probably only develop towards someone with strength like Yan Nantian. TSK, there probably aren't a lot of women in the world who can resist your charm. It's no wonder that sect Master Chiu is so infatuated with you. Hua Sengzan smiled. "We're just friends." Li Qingshan said, "It doesn't matter whether we're friends or not. If she's interested in me, I definitely won't turn her down." Hua Sengzan said, "If there's no love between us, then even if we rely on each other, it'll only add to our loneliness." Li Qingshan said, "I think you have nothing better to do." Hua Sengzan smiled. "You can say that." There was nothing Li Qingshan could do about how unruffled he was. He thought of something and teased, "Though you're willing to offend your friends to help me. Don't tell me you have some sort of special hobby?" Hua Sengzan said extremely seriously, "You overestimate yourself." Li Qingshan sniggered and studied him. "It's not like I can't make do." Hua Sengzan couldn't take it either. "Someone asked me to take care of you." Li Qingshan said, "You're finally telling the truth. It's Gu Yenying, isn't it?" Suddenly hearing someone directly refer to her by her name, Hua Qingzan was slightly taken aback. As a matter of fact, he even became rather annoyed. However, with his great self-restraint, he did not show it. He only asked, "How did you know?" Li Qingshan said, "Even though I'm not the smartest, I'm at least average smart. The person who asked you to take care of me is definitely not Boss Wang. He hates me more than enough. The commander hates me, but you want to take care of me. This means that the person's status is even higher. Even Boss Wang has to listen to him. I've only seen such an important person, Gu Yenying." Hua Sengzan said, "A smart person. Your analysis isn't bad." Li Qingshan said excitedly, "Moreover, I dare say that you're interested in her." "Oh, why is that?" Li Qingshan said, "To be able to remain unperturbed by a peerless beauty like Clan Master Chiu and not be interested in men It only means that you love someone else. I've only seen one woman who can surpass Clan Master Chiu in terms of charm. I believe that Commander Gu wouldn't treat me, Li Qingshan, as someone important. Asking you to take care of me was probably just a casual request. Just a casual request. And you're willing to offend your best friend to protect me. This isn't just loyalty to a superior. Hua Sungzan said, "You're too humble. You're not just ordinarily smart, but extremely smart." Li Qingshan said, "Then you really shouldn't be taking care of me." "Why?" Li Qingshan grinned. "Because we're rivals in love." Even Hua Sungzan was stunned for a while before bursting into laughter. He laughed so hard that he held his knees. "You're good, Li Qingshan. I haven't laughed so freely in a long time." Puffed. "Rival in love. Ha 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 ha, this is so interesting." Li Qingshan smiled at him. He was as firm as a rock that was dug out from a ravine. He was obviously not joking. Hua Sungzan also stopped smiling, but the smile on his face did not disappear. "Then, do you know what we look like?" "Like what?" "Like two ants fighting over a mountain." "Hey, go away. This is my territory. I can't even move a stone." Li Qingshan said, "Even if you're an ant, as long as you climb hard, you'll reach the top of the mountain one day." "Climb? You know, mountains are constantly getting taller. You've only climbed a small step, and it's 10 times taller. Wake up." Li Qingshan said confidently, "You underestimate me." Hua Sungzan said, "All right, then I'll definitely take care of you. Let's see how long you can climb." Li Qingshan was surprised. "Of course I'll climb until I die. Don't tell me that you're going to pursue a woman as your whole life." He set a distant goal for himself and worked hard to achieve it. However, he did not regard these goals as the ultimate meaning of his life. It did not matter whether it was Gu Yennying or going to the ninth heaven. If he was killed halfway through his efforts, he could only shrug his shoulders and apologize to Brother Bull. This was the mark left behind in his previous life, and it was also a profound experience in this life. The hunger and cold in the cowshed made the cowherd boy only want to wear cotton clothes and eat meat. To this day, his goal was only equivalent to a bigger cotton shirt and a more delicious meat. He knew better than anyone else how precious these two things were. The warmth of cotton clothes could warm one's heart, and the taste of meat was better than all elixirs. However, they were not sacred, and they could be obtained with a pair of hands. "I have nothing better to do, but you won't understand this feeling." Hua Sungzan smiled. Chapter 299. "You'll regret it," Li Qingshan said seriously. Hua Sungzan stared at Li Qingshan. Gradually, the corners of his mouth curled up uncontrollably, and he couldn't help but laugh. Li Qingshan raised his eyebrows. "Are you done laughing?" Hua Sungzan held Li Qingshan's shoulder. Sorry. I really couldn't hold it in." After laughing for a while, he said, "I'm willing to take care of you, not only because of her instructions. You're really too interesting. If you were a little more handsome, it wouldn't be impossible." Li Qingshan felt a chill run down his spine when he returned the words. Hua Sungzan laughed as he rode the wind and flew into the sky. The smile on his face gradually disappeared, and he muttered to himself, "Do you regret it?" Li Qingshan turned around and returned to the courtyard. He saw Lu Chuanfeng holding the wine jar and pouring it into his mouth. Sun Fubai seemed to be trying to persuade him. Lu Chuanfeng didn't listen to him. He put down the wine jar and said, "I paid for this table of food and wine out of my own pocket. When other masters come to 100 Flavors Tower to eat, the shopkeeper will welcome them with open arms. No matter what they eat, he won't charge a single spirit stone, but I have to pay the bill honestly. If I want a bargain, I have to be looked down upon. What's all this for? It's all to get you to acknowledge the School of Novels and learn their methods. Sun Fubai said, "Junior brother, just say a few words less. Little, and let's go." As Li Qingshan spoke, he brushed past Lu Chuanfeng as if he didn't see him. Little and jumped up and followed him into the depths of the bamboo basket. Lu Chuanfeng was stunned, and he suddenly threw the wine jar on the ground. "Go, all of you go. You're all the same anyway. You all look down on me." Li Qingshan suddenly stopped and said without turning his head, "Lu Chuanfeng, please behave yourself. Perhaps you can still get some respect from me, but if you only know how to drink and throw a fit." That was indeed not worthy of respect. The school of novels had fallen to such a state. You'd better think about the source of all this. Lu Chuanfeng was speechless. "Well said." A man with a tall crown on his head slowly walked over. He was thin and unsophisticated, and was none other than the head of the Yinyang school, Ma Bai. Sun Fubai thought to himself, Cloud Wisp Island today. It was really bustling like never before. It was him. He had brought this vitality, but how long could he maintain it? Li Qingshan said, "Li Qingshan greets master. I didn't know you were coming. What's the matter?" As expected, Ma Bai's gaze fell on Little, and his eyes filled with amazement and expectation. "I'm here for Little, Anne. Have you heard of the cloud bookcase of the 7 lots?" Li Qingshan shook his head, but Sun Fubai said in surprise, "Could it be the supreme secret technique of the Yinyang school, the cloud bookcase of the 7 lots?" After Sun Fubai's explanation, Li Qingshan learned that the cloud bookcase of the 7 lots was an ancient cultivation technique passed down from ancient times. Its value was even higher than the Buddhist Vajra demon subduing technique, and it was extremely difficult to cultivate. Not only did one have to be extremely sensitive to the 5 elements, but they also had to be able to use them freely. Even in ancient times, there were very few people who could cultivate it. However, once it was cultivated, it would be incredibly powerful. As long as one was willing to learn it, they could use almost all of the 5 elements and yin and yang techniques. The most powerful aspect of the cloud bookcase of the 7 lots was not combat, but divination. It could predict the past and future, and predict the changes of fortune. Little and happens to be the perfect successor for this secret technique. Ma Bai's eyes lit up. He was eager to see the effects of Little and practicing this secret technique of the school of Yinyang. Li Qingshan said, "Little and is a disciple of Buddhism after all. This probably isn't something we can decide." Ma Bai said, "I've already discussed it with the One Thought Master. He's agreed." "Don't the two clash?" Li Qingshan was rather surprised. He never thought the One Thought Master would be so generous, willing to let his primary disciple spend time and effort on another cultivation technique. "You have no idea. There are many differences between ancient cultivation techniques and modern cultivation techniques. In particular, they are completely different from Buddhist cultivation methods, so they don't clash with the Guardian King's demon subduing technique. But his cultivation speed will definitely slow down." Li Qingshan immediately saw the crux of the issue. This was also the reason why the One Thought Master agreed to Ma Bai's request. Little N's cultivation speed was just far too fast, which made him rather fearful for some reason. He obviously did not understand the great wishes made in the path of white bone and great beauty. This was just the instinct of a monk. "That's right, but I think it's worth it." As a Heavenly Meridian's prodigy, Little N might be able to progress smoothly as a Qi practitioner without any obstructions, but once he reaches foundation establishment, this advantage will no longer exist. Every single step further up becomes even more difficult, so his foundation will become especially important. Why don't he use this period of advantage to make his foundation even more stable? Li Qingshan found it reasonable He asked Little, "And what do you think?" Little and lowered her head in thought, for a while like an adult. She glanced at Li Qingshan and nodded in agreement. Seeing how Little and had agreed, Ma Bai smiled. He was a clever person. Looking at the situation, he thought, this Li Qingshan really is extremely important to her. Does she want to slow down her cultivation speed and wait for him? However, Little Anne's intentions were not what Ma Bai thought. It was different from what the one thought master and the other school leaders had predicted. As a matter of fact, it was the complete opposite. She was worried about being separated from him, but she was also afraid that she would be the one to fall behind. In the past, Oxen had once told her that his path would be extremely treacherous. She would have to do everything she could to keep up with his footsteps. If she felt like she couldn't persevere, then she should give up on the path of white bone and great beauty. How could she give up on it? Whether it was the Guardian King's scripture of demons subdual or the cloud bookcase of the 7 lots, they were like rocks to mountains compared to the path of white bone and great beauty. Her cultivation speed was actually not particularly fast. Compared to Li Qingshan, who had transformed into a demon, her cultivation still paled slightly in comparison. He was unable to take a single step closer to the formation. He could sense that even if he demonified, he would not be able to break through this force. Lu Chuanfeng took out his waste tablet as the leader of the School of Novels. The design of the waste tablet was different from that of regular disciples. It was extremely intricate. Half of it was a rising and falling cloud, while the cloud transformed into various figures, plants, birds, and beasts. Every single one of them was as thin as a mustard seed, yet they were also extremely detailed. Lu Chuanfeng raised the tablet, and the formation flashed slightly. With a hum, it seemed like some mechanism had been activated. Lu Chuanfeng indicated to Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan walked towards the formation. This time, there were no more obstructions. As soon as he entered the formation, Li Qingshan sensed an extremely pure and tremendous power. It was much more powerful than what he felt in the secluded cultivation room in the Hawkwolf Guard, and he could sense that the formation was not just for gathering the spiritual qi of the world. Instead, it was connected to an even larger and more complicated system. Li Qingshan had a good feeling about it. That was the massive formation that enveloped the entire 100 schools of thought. The formation on Cloud Wisp Island was one of the crucial points of the formation. The Lake of Dragons and Snakes had always been a rare, blessed land for it to be chosen as the base of the 100 schools of thought, and the paths chosen by the 10 schools of thought were blessed lands among blessed lands. The various islands were connected by underground spiritual veins, and the places they had chosen to construct formations were the crucial points of the spiritual veins. Through the gathering of the formations, the spiritual qi had reached an unbelievable density. It was a rare holy land for cultivation, but only the leaders of the schools had the right to cultivate here. Even primary disciples did not have that right. However, the School of Novels had already declined to such a state, so the various rules were basically useless. Lu Chuanfeng had also witnessed Li Qingshan's wealth, so he was unable to think of anything else that could interest him. Being in the formation, Li Qingshan increasingly felt the importance of the word earth in wealth, companionship, method, and location. Cultivating here, even if qi practitioners could not absorb the spiritual qi of the world, the effects would still be 10 times stronger than cultivating outside. Moreover, he could absorb the spiritual qi of the world, and his qi refinement would experience a qualitative improvement. Although he could not completely understand the value of the formation, he knew that according to the rules of the 100 schools of thought, using any facilities would require a fee of spirit stones. Just as he was about to ask, Lu Chuanfeng said, "Cultivate well." He turned around and left. He had wanted to use the drunkenness to reveal the truth and move Li Qingshan, but he did not expect it to have the opposite effect. Li Qingshan was disheartened and no longer had any hope. It was indeed a waste for such a person to cultivate the techniques of the school of novels. Looking at Lu Chuanfeng's somewhat lonely back, Li Qingshan said, "Wait." Lu Chuanfeng turned around, and Li Qingshan said sincerely, "Thank you." Lu Chuanfeng forced a smile and said, "You're welcome. You're the only disciple of the school of novels." "But I'm sorry." Li Qingshan was clear about gratitude and grudges. He would definitely think of ways to repay them, but he could not waste his precious time to cultivate a technique with no future to repay them. Lu Chuanfeng said, "You don't need to say anything. I understand, and I won't force you anymore." Li Qingshan said, "Why do you have to write that kind of book?" Lu Chuanfeng lowered his head and clenched his fists. "I don't want to write that kind of thing. I know that the novels I write are trash, but no one is willing to read them. But no one is willing to read the things that I write seriously. A novel that no one wants to read won't gather any power of faith. Then why don't you just give up on the techniques of the school of novels? With your cultivation of the 10th layer of qi refinement, if you work hard, you have a high chance of reaching foundation establishment. If that's the case, I'll become an ordinary cultivator, and the path of the school of novels will really be severed." The previous head of the school of novels, who was also my master, held my hand before he died and asked me to pass down the path of the school of novels. "Although you look down on me, regardless of whether you look up to me or not, I'm still a school of novels." After saying that, Lu Chuanfeng seemed to be relieved. He raised his head and muttered, "Master, I've tried my best." At that moment, Li Qingshan suddenly said, "It's not impossible to revitalize the school of novels." Lu Chuanfeng suddenly turned around. "You're willing to cultivate the techniques of my school of novels?" Li Qingshan said, "I didn't say that." "Then you? But I might be able to help you, but I have a condition. Take back and destroy those novels of yours." Lu Chuanfeng instinctively wanted to refuse. Those pieces of trash were the only treasures he had left. Chapter 300. Book C Pavilion. When Li Qingshan awoke from his meditative state, the moon was already high in the sky. Its silvery radiance was like a wash, illuminating the earth. Rows upon rows of bamboo buildings were cut by the moonlight into a crisscrossing scene of light and shadow. On the ground, there was also a pillar of light that shot up into the sky. He suddenly realized that he was in this pillar of light. It was the spiritual light gathered by the formation. The true qi in his sea of qi became more and more abundant. Under the suppression of the spirit turtle and the purification of the Sumeru ring, it was like a boundless, pure lake without any ripples. However, as long as he needed to, he could also raise a monstrous wave and destroy everything in front of him. Li Qingshan smiles. With the help of this magic formation, the Lianqi stage will not be an obstacle for him. He steps out of the magic formation and walks along the long corridor of light and shadow to his residence, a bamboo house facing the lake. "I didn't even have time to tidy up after I made my choice this morning." He was going to stay in the 100 schools of thought for a long time, so he needed to tidy himself up. Light flickered in the bamboo basket, and faint voices could be heard. Li Qingshan smiled and pushed the door open. Lu Chuanfeng and Sun Fubai, who were sitting across from each other, turned their heads together. "Qingshan." Li Qingshan walked to the table, sat down cross-legged, and calmly asked, "Have you decided?" "I've decided." Lu Chuanfeng's eyes were red, as if he had been crying. Agreeing to what Li Qingshan said was equivalent to denying all his past efforts. It also meant that the characters he had created would leave him forever, never to appear in this world again. Although they were fake and lifeless, they had accompanied him through countless days and nights. If it weren't for Sun Fubai's advice, he wouldn't have been able to make such a decision in such a short time. Sun Fubai said, "We'll wait for daybreak. I'll order my men to recall and destroy those novels." Li Qingshan said, "That's not necessary. Let them fade, naturally." Huh. Lu Chuanfeng's eyes widened. Li Qingshan said, "All I need is determination. I hate people who are unwilling to sacrifice anything and just want to sit still and wait for others to save them. Luckily, you're not one of them." Lu Chuanfeng felt as if he had been saved from death's door. She grabbed Li Qingshan's hand and thanked him profusely. When he calmed down, Li Qingshan said, "Then let's begin." "How do we start?" Lu Chuanfeng and Sun Fubai looked at each other. Li Qingshan shrugged. "Of course, it's to teach me the techniques of the school of novels. You're willing to learn?" Lu Chuanfeng asked in disbelief. Li Qingshan's attitude was quite firm at the beginning. "Not necessarily. I have to understand it first, but I might learn it. I'm not a savior. I can't possibly not understand the school of novels." "I'll save the school of novels," Li Qingshan said matter-of-factly. His principle was to do it to the end. Lu Chuanfeng's face was full of excitement, but Sun Fubai's heart was filled with worry. Would it be possible to bring this decaying body back to life by injecting fresh and powerful blood into it? Or would it be a waste of this blood? But no matter what, the school of novels, which had stagnated for many years, began to move forward again. "Senior brother, tell me," Sun Fubai cleared his throat and began the lesson. The techniques of the school of novels weren't difficult to cultivate. They didn't even need to cultivate another technique. They only needed to use the Gui water condensation technique as the foundation. They only needed to condense a divine talisman in their body. Divine talismans were a type of spiritual talisman, but they were different from ordinary spiritual talismans. Spiritual talismans were documents of heaven and earth. Cultivators could use them to communicate with heaven and earth, but divine talismans could communicate with another special power. It was the power of faith that came from the hearts of living beings. Cultivators who possessed divine talismans would be able to live in the mortal world. Mortals believed that this was the characteristic of gods. The name of the divine talisman was the Talisman of Great Creation. In the distant past, an ancient cultivator had replicated the twisting form of the underground spirit vein. That was the embryonic form of the Talisman of Great Creation. The first step for a disciple of the school of novels was to condense this divine talisman. This wasn't difficult for Li Qingshan. He estimated that he would be able to do it in 10 days at most. The attribute of the water armor played a crucial role. But this was the simplest step for a disciple of the school of novels. Gathering the power of faith to strengthen this divine talisman was the most difficult step. It wasn't easy to write a novel that could become a legend, but in Li Qingshan's previous life, he had personally seen many people do it. He had personally witnessed the birth of many legendary characters. If the divine talisman of great creation existed in that world, they would definitely appear in this world alive. So, what was he going to do now? Find one of the books and copy it? Seeing that Li Qingshan was willing to learn the methods of the school of novels and didn't need to destroy his own novel, Lu Chuanfeng regained his spirit and said proudly, "Although you look down on me, it's really not easy to write a novel. If you write it yourself, you might not even be able to compare to me." Li Qingshan agreed with him. He wasn't the type to sit down and write novels. Putting aside the fact that he couldn't remember so many words in his previous life, even if he could, would he be able to change everything? Those stories that were filled with modern tastes probably wouldn't fit the mindset of the people of this era. In the end, they would only be treated as the dreams of a madman. Even if he could really copy out a legendary novel, how many years would it take for it to accumulate? Even if he succeeded in the end, it would only be his problem. It wouldn't be considered as saving the school of novels. Sun Fubai had also thought of this problem. He sighed with some worry. "This isn't easy," Li Qingshan said confidently. "I think you guys are mistaken about the most important problem." "What?" "Whether it's novels or divine talismans, they're all just opportunities. The most important thing is the medium." "What do you mean by medium?" This new term left Sun Fubai and Lu Chuanfeng rather confused. Li Qingshan explained, "Slightly, it's the so-called channel of dissemination. Even if you write a beautiful novel, it'll be pointless if no one reads it." Lu Chuanfeng said in disagreement, "If you think that's the problem, then you're underestimating us a little too much." Only then did Li Qingshan learn that Sun Fubai had an extremely large business in the mortal world, in the Clear River Prefecture. All of the major bookstores were under his name. All of them were under his name. As long as Lu Chuanfeng wrote them, no matter how unbearable the content was, the Mo family's printing press would be able to print them out in large quantities and place them in bookstores all over the country. Every single copy of the book was cheap and could even be given away for free. It was all useless. Li Qingshan smiled. "Is that all?" "What else?" Lu Chuanfeng said. Li Qingshan said, "I was born in a small mountain village. There wasn't a single bookstore there, and I haven't seen a single book in over a decade. You can count the number of literate people there with a single hand." "So what?" Lu Chuanfeng was at a loss. It was very normal for ignorant people from mountain villages to be illiterate. Those people looked down on even the scholars among the mortals, let alone the mighty Qi warriors. However, Sun Fubai seemed to understand something. Li Qingshan added, "You mentioned earlier that the officials of the school of Confucianism who watch over a region will condense a divine talisman in their bodies, right?" "Yeah, the divine talisman is called the Talisman of Great Virtue. It's actually the original talisman of virtue of the school of Taoism. Virtue was an extremely important term to ancient cultivators. The difficulty of cultivation was great, and demons and monsters posed a great threat. It forced them to use all the power they could. The two types of divine talismans used two completely different powers in people's hearts. One was faith, and the other was gratitude. After ancient cultivators did good deeds, there would often be commoners willing to erect a longevity tablet and worship their benefactor day and night. Although the talisman of virtue couldn't turn fake into real, like the talisman of great creation, it could turn illusion into reality. However, it had the effect of turning misfortune into fortune. In that chaotic era, where demons roamed, luck was even more important than power. Cultivators often ran into a dog around a corner. You can tell it's a demon general at a glance. In such a predicament, it didn't matter what kind of genius you were. You could only end up as a snack. What? A foundation establishment cultivator? Did you think a demon commander wouldn't come out for a walk? There were also powerful mutants and terrifying demonic cultivators. The power of an individual was truly too insignificant. Even if one cultivated in seclusion for the rest of their lives, it was inevitable that disaster would come from the heavens just by sitting at home. Thus, learning divination and accumulating merit became essential subjects for cultivators. Being able to predict such a situation, or even having a bit more luck to avoid such a situation, became crucial. However, in this era, there was no need to worry about such situations. Although cultivators still fought fiercely against each other, compared to demons, ghosts, mutants, and demonic cultivators, they appeared extremely gentle and adorable. Spending effort on accumulating merit became somewhat of a loss. In the Confucian school, Only the unworthy disciples would walk the path of an official. This caused many cultivators to sigh at the collapse of morality and the decline of human hearts. Sun Fubai said, "Qingshan, what do you mean?" Li Qingshan said, "What I mean is that you've all been mistaken about your own identities from the very beginning. What novelists pay attention to is not how to make up stories, but to be like the officials of the Confucian school, managing this 3,000 li of land and trying to make as many people as possible the disseminators of stories. In this world, these people were truly inferior. They were looked down upon everywhere. Their status was even lower than farmers, who knew how many worlds separated Qi practitioners from these people, yet he said he wanted to use their power now. Lu Chuanfeng and Sun Fubai had never even considered it before, but after careful consideration, they found it to be very reasonable. Originally, when Li Qingshan said he could save the school of novels, they did not completely believe it. They only wanted to give it a try. But now, they all believed it would work. If they continued with Li Qingshan's plan, the school of novels would have a future. Stop writing at your desk. Go out and establish all of this. It might take some time, but as long as we succeed, many people will believe us even if we say the end of the world is coming next year. By then, what kind of power will we be able to use? The power of the end of the world. Li Qingshan smiled. Sun Fubai and Lu Chuanfeng were so excited that they could barely contain themselves. There was only a single thought in their heads. The school of novels could be saved. Uncle Fu, this matter will be very troublesome. You'll need to use the power you have in the mortal world to find as many helpers as you can to complete it bit by bit. Sun Fubai waved his hand with a smile. It's not troublesome at all. At his age, his cultivation had stopped advancing a long time ago. There was not much point in persisting with cultivation anymore. However, if he really could succeed with this, it was not impossible for his cultivation to advance to a whole new level, reaching a realm that he would have never imagined in the past. The power gathered by the divine talismans had always been a power that surpassed the conventions of cultivation. Whether it was for the school of novels or himself, he would definitely do everything he could. The reason for the rise of the school of novels was laid on this night with the bright moon. To be continued. The Book Sea Pavilion. Chapter 301. In the tea house, an old man wearing an old robe stood in front of a table on a high platform. He was telling the story of Emperor Xingzhu defeated the Western barbarians. Although it was an old story that everyone knew about when it came out of his mouth, the customers in the tea house were mesmerized by it and forgot to eat the fruits on their plates. Sun Shuping was originally a scholar, but like most of his peers, he didn't make a name for himself. As the saying goes, 100 useless scholars are useless. Once there is no hope of becoming an official, those who do well will become an advisor to others. Those who don't do well will open a private school and become a teacher. Of course, there were those who ended up on the streets and became beggars. His life was neither good nor bad. Because of his ability to speak, he became the disciple of an old storyteller and became a storyteller. Because he was literate and well-read, his accomplishments in this field were even higher than his master's. Unknowingly, decades had passed, and he could be considered to have made a name for himself. A string of ear-piercing bird cries rang out. Sun Shuping's mouth did not stop moving as he looked over with a frown. He saw a fat man covered in silk carrying a bird cage as he walked into the courtyard. He casually squeezed his way to the front of the stage and sat down. The bird seemed to be frightened, and its calls became even more shrill, causing everyone to glare angrily at it. However, they seemed to be afraid of the fat man's power and dared not say anything. Sun Shuping had no choice but to stop and smiled. "Sir, birds are not allowed in the tea house. May I trouble you to hang it outside?" The fat man rolled his eyes. hang it outside. Do you know how much my bird is worth? If I lose it, you'll pay for it. You tell your story, and it calls its own. You guys compete and see who is better. Don't worry, I won't give you a single copper coin. I'll give you more than these poor people. Sun Shuping's frown deepened. He slammed the gavel and said, "So what if you foresee the future? Listen to the next chapter." He ended the book with an old saying that would not change for 1,000 years. He flicked his sleeves and left. In the tea house, cheers rang out, not only for the story, but also for the integrity of the storyteller. Many copper coins were thrown onto the stage. His disciple, Little Shirtu, rushed onto the stage and picked up the coins while bowing to everyone like a little monkey, causing laughter. Ouch! Little Shirtu cried out in pain and fell to the ground. Blood flowed down from his forehead, and a blood-stained silver horn fell onto the stage. Sun Shuping hurried over to help his disciple up. He pointed at the fatty and said angrily, "You, tell me more. I have plenty of money." The fat man sneered and tossed a piece of silver in his hand. "Humph, if I support you, you're a character. If I don't support you, you're just a stupid storyteller. You dare to throw a tantrum with me? You know who I am? I'll smash you to death with money, you old thing." Booksy Pavilion net. A streak of golden light flew down from the upper floor and struck the fat man's head. It bounced off and landed on the stage. It was an ingot of gold. When he looked at the fatty again, he saw that his face was already covered in blood, and he had directly fainted. "Mr. Sun, our shopkeeper invites you in." A strong man somehow flashed and appeared in front of Sun Shuping. When Little Shirtu saw the gold, he hurriedly covered his head and picked up the gold. He took a bite and exclaimed in surprise, "Master, it's really gold. It's such a big piece." His head immediately stopped hurting. He had never touched gold in his entire life. A child who grew up in a tile-roof shop wasn't as precious as gold. Sun Shuping felt a bit sad. Storytelling was a lowly profession, and anyone could scold it. He had experienced this many times, but he didn't want this child to suffer for the rest of his life. He decided to change his profession. As his mind ran wild, he followed the man to a private room on the second floor. He lifted the bamboo curtain and saw an old man with white hair and a ruddy complexion sitting there. His clothes weren't particularly luxurious, but it was obvious that they were made of the best and most comfortable material. He didn't exude any arrogance, but just sat there quietly, giving off an aura of a crane among a flock of chickens. Based on his many years of experience, he felt that this noble person in front of him didn't seem like someone who would come to this kind of place to listen to storytelling. It was more likely that he was a cultivator, so he didn't dare to slight him. He respectfully bowed and said, "This junior is Sun Shuping. Thank you for your help." Sun Fubai looked up and down at this famous storyteller within a radius of 100 li. He nodded slightly in satisfaction and once again confirmed Li Qingshan's thoughts. If this storyteller spoke, even the most ordinary story would become much more vivid and interesting. "Brother, have you heard of Cloud Wisp Society?" "No." "Now you've heard of it. This isn't the place to talk. Come with me." Sun Fubai stood up and walked out the door. Little Shirtu was holding his head with one hand and holding the gold in the other as he stuck his head out of the door. "But I only know how to tell stories." Sun Shuping was taken aback. He struggled to imagine why a noble person who could casually toss around gold, a legendary cultivator, would look for a storyteller like him. "Then that's enough." Sun Fubai rubbed Little Shirtu's head. "There's plenty of gold." Little Shirtu immediately felt like his head no longer hurt, and his blood stopped flowing. After Sun Fubai left the 100 Schools of Thought, he immediately gathered the managers of the major bookstores and made an announcement to the various cities and districts of the Clear River Prefecture. recruiting people. At the same time, he personally visited the most famous storytellers and singers within the Clear River Prefecture. According to Li Qingshan's plan, these people's greatest use was not storytelling and singing, but as mentors who would pass on their experiences and become the core of the Cloud Wisp Society. At the same time, he found an estate in a corner of the prefectural city to serve as the headquarters of the Cloud Wisp Society. Under the impetus of absolute power and wealth, the Cloud Wisp Society that Li Qingshan envisioned was rapidly established. However, he still had no idea when it would be able to unleash its power and how much power it would be able to unleash. As Sun Fubai ran around, Li Qingshan arrived on the divine mechanism island of the School of Moism, preparing to attend his first lesson after coming to the 100 Schools of Thought. How Pingyang and Zhang Lanqing waited there under the iconic, huge arched door of Divine Mechanism Island. The island was filled with various strange machines and tall structures. A group of wooden horse puppets galloped past, filled with a strange sense of vitality. They entered a grand building shaped like a conch shell. It looked like shit to Li Qingshan. It also spiraled upwards, stopping at around the second or third floor before entering the room at the center of the spiral. The circular room seemed like a conch shell had been turned upside down. It was shaped like a staircase. Many people were already seated there, waiting, chatting in groups of 3 or 5. Apart from the disciples of Moism in their ink-green uniforms, there were also many disciples from other schools in uniforms of other colors and styles. Although Li Qingshan's set of green bamboo-colored robes was the only one of its kind, it did not stand out among the crowd. However, all Qi practitioners had sharp ears and eyes. Glancing over, the topic of discussion would change silently. Chapter 3:02. A mocking voice came from the crowd. Li Qingshan raised his eyebrows and looked back to see who dared to provoke him. Was it the Taoist disciple of that sloppy old Taoist? Or was it a Buddhist disciple who was dissatisfied with little n? All he saw was a young man in white dressed like a Confucian scholar with 2 beautiful girls beside him. HM? A Confucian disciple. Who are you? Tell me your name. Chu Tian snorted. Don't pretend you don't know me. I am Chu Tian. Li Qingshan found him vaguely familiar. He suddenly remembered. Wasn't this the genius who had the 5 elements constitution during the attribute test? However, they had never interacted with each other before, so no matter how he looked at him, he was completely unaware that he had caused Chu Tian to lose 1,000 spirit stones. Even if he had known, he would have scolded him and said that he deserved it. Seeing that the other party had come with ill intentions, Chu Tian did not bother to be polite and said, I've always been too lazy to remember the names of small fries. Chu Tian's eyes widened in anger. No one had ever dared to look down on him like this since he was young. All right, Li Qingshan, this young master has come to humiliate you a little. If you just accept it obediently, then so be it. Making this young master happy is your blessing, yet you're still bold enough to jump up and talk back. You have no idea what kind of trouble you've caused. I see that you're a talent. Now, admit your mistake and call me boss, and we'll be brothers. Li Qingshan was dumbfounded by what he heard. He never thought there would actually be such a weirdo in the world. Even his anger vanished. He frowned at Chu Tian before turning to Hao Pingyang. Is there something wrong with this person's head? Hao Pingyang and Zhang Lanqing were also shocked. They did not expect Chu Tian, one of the top 3 geniuses of the entrance exam, to have something wrong with his head. Li Qingshan was the chief disciple of the School of Novels. Although he had attracted a lot of disdain and hostility, those who came here were all new disciples. Who would make enemies just for a moment of fun? That would be stupid. But this genius Chu Tian did not have such considerations. He said something that shocked even the onlookers. The young girl beside Chu Tian pouted coquettishly. "How dare you say that about our big brother Tian? Do you know that our big brother Tian is—" Before she could finish her sentence, Li Qingshan had already pulled Hao Pingyang away like he was hiding from a madman, which immediately made her face bright red. Chu Tian angrily said, "Li Qingshan, stop right there. Are you afraid of this young master? If you're scared, then call me boss. Otherwise, I won't let you off." Li Qingshan said, "There is only one person in my life who deserves me to call him Lauda. It looked like shit. Stay away from me. Don't think that I won't dare to step on you just because you're shit." The quarrel between the two had already attracted many onlookers. As soon as these words were spoken, the crowd roared with laughter. Hao Pingyang laughed. What a wonderful metaphor. Hua Chenglu and Yu Zijian stood to one side as well. They had received guidance from a senior as well. Out of the various introductory courses for forging artifacts, this professor from the School of Moism taught them the best. Hua Chenglu smiled. Li Qingshan was still the same as when she first met him. He was extremely arrogant. Chu Tian never thought he would become a laughingstock instead. He was utterly furious. Just when he was about to lose his temper, someone called out, "The professor is here." The disciples all returned to their seats. Although Chu Tian was filled with hatred, he was not bold enough to start a fight in front of the professor. The 100 schools of thought seemed open and free, but they were not without rules. In fact, we don't even need a tripod. After the lecture, he picked up the wooden box that he had brought. There were many small square wooden blocks placed neatly in it. He let the disciples in the front row past them to the back. Meng Shiqi asked them to turn it into a ball without destroying the wood grain as much as possible. The material of the wooden block was pine wood. It was relatively soft and easy to change its shape. If one wanted to learn refining weapons, he had to be able to use his own strength to change the shape of the material. Li Qingshan also got a pine wood block and immediately began to practice. He slowly injected his true qi into it and followed the method that Meng Shiqi taught him to let his true qi gradually fuse with the wooden block. With the extremely pure true qi and the gentle and easy to manipulate nature of the Gui water true qi, he succeeded in this step on the first time. When he began to change his true qi, the shape of the wooden block also twisted and changed a little. It was as though it was no longer wood. It also became water with the Gui water true qi. Chapter 303. Li Qingshan's confidence was boosted. After trying for a long time, he finally removed the 8 sharp corners of the pinewood block, but the wood grain was broken inch by inch. It was a complete mess. In a moment of panic, he couldn't help but inject more true qi into it, and the wood block immediately shattered with a bang. He then looked at Qian Rongji, who was beside him. She wasn't any better than him. Qian Rongji casually crushed the pinewood block and smiled. "Looks like none of us are geniuses." But it wasn't too bad. Li Qingshan believed that as long as he was a little more stable, the entire ball wouldn't be a problem. However, he still had to carefully experience how to maintain the pinewood grain. There were also many qi practitioners who tried for a long time, but couldn't even achieve the first step of merging qi and objects. Naturally, they couldn't change the shape of the pine wood in the slightest. If they were too anxious, they would inevitably break the wood block. Meng Shiqi mocked. "If you can't even do this, it proves that you don't have talent in smithing. You don't have to listen anymore. Save yourself some time." Some qi practitioners were proud and arrogant. Moreover, this Professor Meng was only in the qi refinement realm. Some of them stood up and walked out. Then Meng Shiqi smiled and said, "Actually, I also failed in my first smithing. Everyone was stunned. Meng Shiqi said, "Arrogance is the biggest obstacle to learning. If you don't even have this bit of patience, you really don't need to learn smithing. Don't forget, hard work makes up for your shortcomings. All right, raise your results for me to see." Many pine wood balls were raised. Of course, if they were too inferior, they would be too embarrassed to take them out. Meng Shiqi's gaze fell on Chu Tian's hand. The wood ball in his hand was perfectly round with clear grain. There was no break at all, as if it was carved from the wood block. "Fellow Taoist, please stand up. What's your name?" "Chu Tian." "Well done." Chu Tian proudly enjoyed everyone's admiring gazes. He thought, "Of course I'm a genius. Hard work makes up for my shortcomings." He didn't forget to look at Li Qingshan. Qian Rongji transmitted her voice. "I'll say it." Nowadays, it's rare to see such an innocent and cute enemy. Li Qingshan smiled, but he didn't know if she understood. There was no break in between. Meng Shiqi only stopped speaking when the 4-hour lecture ended. He rubbed the back of his neck and stretched. He said, "We're already here today. I'm getting old. I feel tired after standing for a while." He twisted his neck, and with a sudden crack, his head fell off his shoulder and rolled off the podium. Scarlet blood gushed out like a small fountain. This warm classroom suddenly turned into a terrifying murder scene. The lecture hall was filled with cries of surprise. The female Confucian disciple who had a look of disgust on her face towards Li Qingshan shrieked. Chu Tian's expression changed. He didn't expect to witness a murder on his first day at the 100 Schools of Thought. Furthermore, with his cultivation, no one saw who did it. How did he do it? He instinctively released his protective jinqi. In the lecture hall, everyone was in danger. Meng Shiqi's body was still standing straight. The head on the ground said, I used too much strength." The headless body walked down from the podium. The headless body walked off the podium, picked up the head, and put it back on his shoulder. The lecture hall was dead silent. Everyone was dumbfounded. Li Qingshan sniggered. He never thought this professor from the school of Moism would have such a twisted sense of humor. If he used a puppet to teach, then so be it. Not only did he use a puppet to teach, he even used this trick in the end. He had long since noticed that the person teaching on the podium was not a living person at all. It was not a living person at all, but a puppet. Although it looked exactly like a human and gave off the aura of a chi practitioner, the smell it gave off was extremely strange. Drinking tea and coughing were all to create a false impression. It could fool most people, but it couldn't fool his 6 senses. The blood it spat out in the end was not human blood at all. However, it was really amazing that the school of Mo's puppet skills were so exquisite. This lesson must have left a deep impression on the new disciples of the school of Mo. Looking at Qian Rongji again, she looked normal, although she didn't have 6 senses as sharp as his. He would be surprised if she couldn't see through it. For Chu Tian to be praised like this by a puppet, it was really hard for people to look up to him. Puppet Meng Shiqi said, "Sharp and meticulous observation and calm and rational thinking are more important to the path of forging than turning a wooden block into a round one. The latter can be achieved by anyone with more practice. However, if one lacks the former, it will be hard for him to become a forging master." The atmosphere in the lecture hall relaxed, and laughter could be heard everywhere. Although they knew they were fooled, Meng Shiqi, who was hiding somewhere, had won everyone's admiration. However, many female cultivators' faces were still pale. Chu Tian retracted his protective jinqi. His face was red. He felt that Meng Shiqi's words were pointing at him on purpose. puppet Meng Shiqi used his hand to point out the disciples who had not shown any surprise just now. He asked them how they could tell he was a puppet. Li Qingshan did not believe the puppet possessed the ability to think, but it did possess the ability to judge, such as which ball was rounder and which people's expressions changed less. All of this should have followed some sort of procedure. Compared to battle, this was nothing difficult. The pair of eyes that were no different from a real person's should have been the key. When it was Li Qingshan's turn, Li Qingshan stood up. His mouth moved a few times, but he did not produce any sound. Afterwards, he sat down. The puppet professor said extremely sincerely, "Thank you." Li Qingshan smiled. As it seemed, he was right. There was a roar of laughter. Hua Chenglu cheered inside. Just now, she had finally gotten her revenge for being fooled. Apart from being bold, this guy really was smart. She could not help but think of that rainy night in Lakeside City, Grandma Shimon's roar, and how he clasped his hands in an extremely graceful manner in a dark alley in his straw cape. This blurry memory suddenly became clear. Even if a man like him had a bad luck in life and accidentally joined the school of novels, he would still be able to achieve something. After asking everyone, Puppet Meng Shiqi bowed deeply. "Thank you for your suggestions." He pointed at his head. "I've already stored it here. I'll continue improving it when I get back." If it was a flying sword or a flying knife, they could control it. However, refining a supreme-grade spirit artifact seemed a bit difficult for Li Qingshan, who was only at the 6th level of qi refinement. After more than half of the strokes on the cursive sword calligraphy lit up, they stopped, their true qi running out. A blue light flashed in Li Qingshan's eyes. He had naturally chosen to refine the spirit artifact in this formation because he had a plan in mind. Specks of light that could be seen with the naked eye flashed in the formation and merged into his body. His nearly depleted Dantian's sea of qi was once again filled up and rushed into the cursive sword calligraphy. The brilliance dyed the strokes, illuminating the joy on Li Qingshan's face. Just as he was about to succeed, the smile on Li Qingshan's face froze. The process of refining the spirit artifact stopped once again, but it wasn't because he didn't have enough true qi. Every stroke of the cursive sword calligraphy was twisting and trembling, its brilliance flickering. Li Qingshan thought, "Oh no." With a flip of his hands, he directed the cursive sword calligraphy outwards. At the same time, the cursive sword calligraphy shone with dazzling light. Sharp, terrifying sword qi surged out. The sword qi was disorderly, and the sword intent was aimless. However, Li Qingshan felt a bone-chilling coldness as he held the cursive sword calligraphy. The power that a supreme-grade spirit artifact had erupted with was far too terrifying. If it had been directed at him, even heavy injuries would be considered light unless he transformed beforehand and unleashed the spirit turtle's profound shell. There was a flash of light, and the sword qi and sword intent seemed to have never existed in the first place. Time seemed to stop for a moment. With a crack, the pillars of the bamboo building suddenly split apart. Afterwards, as if some sort of mechanism had been triggered, the exquisite, lofty bamboo building shattered into thousands of pieces. It did not collapse, but scattered. Li Qingshan felt his field of vision widen. A fan-shaped empty space appeared before him. The formation was originally located in the very center of the courtyard. Now, he could see the bamboo forest outside the courtyard. "Heavens, what are you doing?" Lu Chuanfeng heard the disturbance and rushed over. Seeing this, he was dumbfounded. "I'm refining a spiritual artifact." Li Qingshan answered honestly. He even showed the cursive sword calligraphy in his hand. He had already made up his mind. If he needed to, he would show the cursive sword calligraphy to others, so there was no need for him to hide it from Lu Chuanfeng. The two of them were in the same boat anyway. T minus, that's a supreme grade spiritual artifact. You're actually refining a supreme grade spiritual artifact. Lu Chuanfeng had already known that this primary disciple of his was not as poor as regular Qi practitioners. However, he was still greatly surprised when he took out a supreme grade spiritual artifact. Li Qingshan said, "What can I? My true Qi is very pure." Lu Chuanfeng said, "Do you have any common sense? Forget the 6th layer. Even if you were at the 10th layer, you still wouldn't be able to refine a supreme grade spiritual artifact. It's not a matter of whether your true Qi is pure or not. It's something that surpasses the abilities of Qi practitioners. It's something that only foundation establishment cultivators can do." Li Qingshan was surprised, but little and can use the Vajra pearl once he obtains it. Lu Chuanfeng said, "Using it is one thing, refining it is another. Do you know what the 100 schools of thought say about little and? What do they say? Evildoer, monster, mediocre opinion." Li Qingshan said disdainfully. However, he also understood that, as someone who cultivated the Gui water condensation method, he could temporarily forget about breaking through this norm of cultivation. "No wonder you dared to duel with Chu Tian." Lu Chuanfeng glanced at the nearly half-destroyed bamboo tower again with lingering fear. Although he was in the 10th layer, if he fought, the one who would die would definitely not be Li Qingshan. Even if he couldn't refine it, as long as he could use it, how many Qi practitioners could resist? Li Qingshan said, "Of course I wouldn't fight a battle unprepared. He has a trump card, but it's not like I don't have one either. Sai, I have to issue another mission for Mahi's disciples to repair it. The spirit stones allocated by the higher-ups aren't even enough for me to go to the tower for some sightseeing." Lu Chuanfeng sighed, then winked at Li Qingshan. "Hey, beloved disciple, when you win 2,000 spirit stones, do you want to invite me to have some fun?" Li Qingshan rolled his eyes. "Who's your beloved disciple? Let me tell you, don't go to that kind of place in the future. I don't get along with the sect. Who knows when they'll kidnap you to deal with me? When that time comes, I'll tell them to kill you." Chapter 3:05. Chapter 41, Refining Cursive Sword Writing. Part 2, Li Qingshan said, "Can you block Begonia's charm technique?" Then, "Of course I can't." "All right, I'll listen to you. You're the boss, okay? Then we'll be brothers from now on." As Li Qingshan spoke, he recalled what Chu Tian had said to him. He couldn't help but laugh heartily, and the slight gloominess from failing to refine the cursive sword calligraphy was swept away. Impudent, Lu Chuanfeng blew his beard and glared at him. He also laughed. In Li Qingshan's eyes, although Lu Chuanfeng was full of flaws, there was one good thing about him, and that was that he did not put on airs. Perhaps it was because he was used to being beaten up by others that he did not have the arrogant and domineering attitude of ordinary Qi practitioners. Li Qingshan asked, "How many spirit stones does the School of Novels get every month?" Lu Chuanfeng squatted down outside the array and said, "Now I get more than 20 pills every month." "Oh, right, you're the first disciple, so you can also get 10 pills every month from now on. Together with the disciples you manage, you can get about 40 pills every month." How pitiful! Li Qingshan shook his head. However, when he thought about it, he could earn more than 20 spirit stones by doing nothing all day and occupy such a precious place for cultivation. It was no wonder that the 100 schools of thought wanted to kick him out. Lu Chuanfeng retorted, "Qi refining realm patriarchs all earn this much. The main reason is that they have too few disciples." Li Qingshan said, "Then how do we calculate it specifically?" Lu Chuanfeng said, "That's complicated. It's mainly dependent on the number of disciples and their cultivation, which is converted into a numerical value. Also, doing more missions and winning in various competitions can also increase the numerical value. On the other hand, if a disciple violates the rules and makes mistakes, the numerical value will be reduced. In short, the better a family develops, the higher the income of the family head, and the more resources he can allocate. Sai, if you can reach the level of Buddhism and Taoism, I will also give you a top-grade spiritual weapon. I remember these words. Let's do our best. Li Qingshan had a new understanding of the School of Novels situation. Although it was very low, it also meant that they had a bright future ahead of them. Most importantly, although this piece of cake was small, they did not need to share it with so many fellow students. The number of people who could have a bite might not be any less than the disciples of those great clans. However, the premise of all this was to make this cake bigger. Li Qingshan was full of confidence in this. Lu Chuanfeng said excitedly, "Don't worry, I'll break through to the foundation establishment realm very soon. At that time, just the salary of the clan head alone will increase tenfold. Furthermore, the true strength of the School of Novels can only be displayed after reaching the foundation establishment realm. Although the School of Novels could turn illusions into reality, they were restricted by two factors. One was the power of faith, and the other was the cultivator themselves. The former was like electricity, while the latter was like a transformer. No matter how strong the electricity was, if the transformer was not powerful enough, it would not be able to convert it into usable electricity. Go write your novel." Li Qingshan smiled and waved his hand. Since he was already a disciple of the School of Novels, it was only right for him to do his part for the school as long as it did not affect his cultivation. After Lu Chuanfeng left, Li Qingshan put away the cursive sword calligraphy with slight regret. Then he took out another scroll of the cursive sword calligraphy. There were 3 scrolls of the cursive sword calligraphy in his hands. However, before he could even let out a sigh of relief, something happened. Several dozen strands of sword qi suddenly swept back, flowing through his meridians and rushing into his sea of qi. As soon as the sword qi entered, his sea of qi immediately began to churn. He felt waves of piercing pain. Spirit turtle suppresses the seas. Li Qingshan bellowed out. The spirit turtle's demon core appeared, and the several dozen strands of sword qi were firmly suppressed, immobilized. However, they refused to shatter under such pressure. They condensed into something tangible, swimming about in his sea of qi. Li Qingshan was still shaken. He felt a layer of cold sweat appear on his back. If his original body were not a great demon with a tough body, his tendons and vessels would have been severed already. If he did not know the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression, he would not have been able to avoid the fate of his core being destroyed either. He hadn't expected the cursive sword calligraphy to have such a vicious trap. Right now, he was incomparably glad that he hadn't refined the supreme-grade cursive sword calligraphy. He didn't even want to think about what would have happened if the violent sword qi that had destroyed more than 10 bamboo buildings had erupted in his body. He had basically witnessed the dangers of the cultivation community once again. He could imagine how the people who had obtained the cursive sword calligraphy before him would refine it happily, only to be killed the next moment. Suddenly, he felt like something had appeared in his head. Chapter 306. There was an additional sword. The countless swords that had danced in his eyes had now merged into one in his heart. It was as black as ink, and he swung it to his heart's content. Li Qingshan seemed to sense something and left the formation. He came to the bamboo forest and took out a sword from his 100 treasures pouch. His arm hung down naturally, and the tip of the sword pointed towards the ground. Suddenly, like a willow in the wind, it rose high and pointed towards the sky. Not far away, an old bamboo was cut open from bottom to top. Li Qingshan did not have the time to be shocked. In his mind, the black sword suddenly fell down. Li Qingshan moved with the sword, turning around and slashing horizontally. The sword chi was like an illusion, and a patch of bamboo fell with a crash. At this moment, it was not the person controlling the sword, but the sword controlling the person. Li Qingshan followed the sword move in his mind and jumped around like a spirit ape. The long sword in his hand disappeared, and only the sword light around him flickered. Wherever it went, it destroyed everything. The sword move and sword intent were extremely sharp. All the sword lights suddenly retracted. Li Qingshan held the sword in front of him with one hand and stroked the spine of the sword with the other. The cold blue light shone on his determined face. So that was how it was. The greatest use of the cursive sword calligraphy was not to defeat the enemy, but to record and pass down the path of the sword of that cultivator. As for the sword chi that went against the flow, it was not a sinister trap, but a way for future generations to experience the sword intent within. It could also be considered a kind of test. If one had talent like little and could comprehend the sword intent to such a degree, just by looking at it, they would be able to control it even if the sword chi went against the flow. But if it was a mediocre person, they would not be qualified to receive this kind of inheritance. But Li Qingshan could not help but think that that cultivator would not have guessed that his cursive sword calligraphy would be split into so many pieces. But if it was the complete cursive sword calligraphy, then just how terrifying would this test be? The black sword in his mind would not be as simple as dancing around a few times. Just the terrifying sword intent it gave off would be enough to instantly destroy the mind of a normal cultivator. He had really obtained something incredible. Li Qingshan suddenly smiled and threw the sword away, stabbing it into a rock. He leapt up and used a few soft bamboo branches as leverage. In a few steps, he arrived at the eastern side of the island, where there was a small hill covered with jagged rocks. He leaped out of the bamboo forest. While he was in midair, he gathered his chi in his dantian and spread his arms wide. The dozens of crisscrossing sword chi suppressed in his dantian shot out and silently sank into the mountain. Only some of the mountain rocks could not withstand the gravity and cracked. Apart from that, there was not much sound. A cricket was originally fluttering its wings on a mountain rock, chirping loudly. At this moment, it had completely stopped and fell from the rock. There was not a trace of injury on its body. Originally, the entire slope was filled with the cries of insects, but now it had all returned to silence, killed by the scattered sword intent. So, this was the correct way to use the cursive sword calligraphy. Li Qingshan understood. He poured his true chi into the cursive sword calligraphy, causing it to flow back and hide in his dantian. Just how shocking would its power be when it suddenly exploded in battle? Of course, since he could comprehend the path of the sword within the cursive sword calligraphy, he obviously would not be harmed by the cursive sword calligraphy. Li Qingshan instead used a brutal method to forcefully suppress the sword chi. But he believed that, while he was not a genius, he was not an idiot either. He had already refined it. As long as he spent some time, he would naturally be able to comprehend the sword Tao of the cursive sword calligraphy. Of course, he would only be able to comprehend the sword Tao of the cursive sword calligraphy. Suddenly, a light flashed in his mind. Li Qingshan suddenly understood why the cursive sword calligraphy had been split into so many parts. He also understood how to fuse them together. It was precisely because he could not pass the test of the complete cursive sword calligraphy that he had split it up. He did not need to be proficient in the art of refining tools. As long as he refined the cursive sword calligraphy and fused the sword chi in his dantian, he would be able to achieve the effect of fusing them. Li Qingshan took out the high-grade cursive sword calligraphy. As long as he could refine these two cursive sword calligraphy, he would be confident of winning against any chi practitioner, let alone Chu Tian. But first, he had to completely comprehend the sword Tao of the cursive sword calligraphy. It was a pity that little An was not here, or she would definitely be able to help him. Perhaps she had sensed his call, but when Li Qingshan looked back, Xiaoan arrived on the ripples, arriving before him with a smile. In the school of Yin Yang, Ma Bai placed his tall hat to the side, a slightly dazed expression on his face. Based on the complexity of the cloud bookcase of the 7 lots, he was already prepared to spend several months teaching her. The cloud bookcase of the 7 lots was divided into 7 main parts. The profoundness and complexity of each part was several times greater than the Gui water condensing qi method, a 5-elemental formula. The difficulty of completely mastering the 7 parts would increase exponentially. Ma Bai explained the first part in great detail, and was about to explain its wonders in detail. Little An said, "Please continue." Ma Bai frowned, but when he thought about how the person sitting in front of him was a rare genius, perhaps it would be easier for him to teach her if she completely understood the entire part. Thus, he taught her the entire cloud bookcase of the 7 lots. Before he could say anything, Little An asked, "Anything else?" Ma Bai said, "No, thank you." Little An stood up and bowed before turning around and leaving. She was in a hurry to see Li Qingshan. Ever since she came to the 100 Schools of Thought, she seemed to spend a lot more time apart from him. She disliked it very much. Ma Bai asked, "Where are you going?" "Isn't that all?" Ma Bai said, "Do you understand?" Little An said, "I understand a little." Ma Bai immediately asked her a few questions. She answered them fluently without even thinking. She did indeed understand a little. Of course, this did not mean she had completely grasped the cloud bookcase of the 7 lots. However, the more profound parts could only be slowly comprehended through cultivation. It was not something that could be explained in a few sentences. As a result, she answered very accurately with a little. However, in order to reach this level of understanding a little, in the past, Ma Bai had spent years under his master's careful guidance. Now, he could finally understand what the one thought master felt a little. Having a disciple like that could basically make a master experience a wondrous sense of defeat. He said reluctantly, "Just talking about it doesn't count as understanding. You need to practice it." As a result, all Little An could do was sit down. Because it was not the Buddhist Dharma, she was unable to progress as quickly as the Guardian King's scripture of demon subdual. After spending an entire day and night, she reached a rudimentary level with the cloud bookcase of the 7 lots. Ma Bai waved his hand in confusion. "You can go. If there's anything you don't understand, you can ask me." Little An bowed again before turning around and leaving. She stood on the waves as her sleeves fluttered in the wind. She arrived on Cloud Wisp Island and found Li Qingshan with a single glance. She smiled sweetly. Li Qingshan immediately asked Little An about the path of the sword in the cursive sword calligraphy. Sure enough, although Little An had never refined a single scroll, her comprehension of the path of the sword in the cursive sword calligraphy surpassed Li Qingshan's. When Li Qingshan heard her words, he immediately felt that he had benefited a lot. Furthermore, Little An also gained much inspiration from Li Qingshan's experiences, improving her sword technique. However, comprehension was the most complicated feeling. Sometimes Little An did not know how to explain it to Li Qingshan. So, she picked up her sword and sparred with Li Qingshan using the sword techniques in the cursive sword calligraphy. Day and night, 2 figures, one large and one small, chased each other in the sea of green bamboo. Their swords clashed, producing clanging sounds as large swathes of the bamboo forest fell. Lu Chuanfeng's heart ached as he watched. The bamboo building had just spent a lot of spirit stones to issue the mission. If this continued, the quiet Cloud Wisp Island would probably be shaved bald by the 2 of them. although it was said to be two people. It was actually just Li Qingshan alone. Little N's sword qi was like a rainbow, but it was extremely condensed, not harming even a single branch or leaf. But after a few days, the number of green bamboos falling greatly decreased. Only then did Lu Chuanfeng feel relieved. After more than 10 days, a spring rain fell, and the bamboo shoots broke through the soil. The spring wind danced, the sea of bamboo rose and fell, and the sky was filled with a fine drizzle. Li Qingshan and Little N stood among them. The lake and mountain scenery in the distance were all blurred in the rain, as if they were in an ink painting. Holding bamboo swords, they sometimes approached and sometimes distanced themselves. The swords in their hands rarely clashed. Every movement they made seemed to have a tacit understanding. It did not seem like they were sparring with swords, but more like they were dancing. At first, Li Qingshan had used a low-grade spirit artifact sword. Later, he changed it to a low-grade spirit artifact, and then to an ordinary sword, until the bamboo sword he was using today. He had personally forged it using artifact refining techniques from the bamboo forest under his feet. Of course, this was not to show off. The higher one's control over sword qi, the lower the requirements for materials. If it were the original Li Qingshan, even a metal sword would have been reduced to smithereens. At this moment, it also proved that he could finally comprehend and control the path of the sword in the cursive sword calligraphy. However, when it came time to truly face an enemy, the stronger the weapon, the better. If he wanted to play the sword in hand, but sword in heart, against a truly powerful opponent, he would be looking to die. Li Qingshan was relieved. He had finally completely mastered the path of the sword in the first volume of the cursive sword calligraphy. He no longer needed the spirit turtle to suppress it. The sword qi swam freely in his sea of qi like fish. He suddenly called out, "Little, and use your full strength." The bamboo swords vanished, turning into a swath of sword qi. Some were heavy, some were light, some were slow, some were fast, some were straight, and some were twisted. This was the first time Li Qingshan had comprehended the intricate changes. He no longer unleashed all of his sword qi at once. Little N smiled as well. Golden light erupted from his body. He wielded the Vajra sword and stabbed it downwards. Steady! Clang! 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 Like the chime of a bell. Only a few strands of sword qi left behind a few shallow marks on the Vajra avatar. The rest was completely unscathed. Buddhist cultivation methods sure are shameless. Li Qingshan grinned. It was obviously no problem for the sword qi to pierce his protective true qi, but it was impossible for it to pierce Little N's golden avatar. Chapter 307. Li Qingshan took out another scroll of the cursive sword calligraphy. With this low-grade cursive sword calligraphy as a foundation, he was confident that he had the ability to refine it. However, after hesitating for a long time, he finally put it away. The counterattack of sword qi was fine, but the sword intent entering his brain was far too dangerous. The brain was known as the spirit platform in the cultivation world, and it was even more important than the Dantian's sea of qi. Furthermore, it was extremely fragile. If his meridians were torn and his Dantian was destroyed, there was still hope for him to recover. However, if his brain was damaged, it would be best if he went crazy. He wasn't in any life-threatening danger right now, so there was no need for him to take this risk. At this moment, the bug pouch at his waist trembled. Li Qingshan opened it and let Millipede out. Millipede's body seemed to have grown a bit longer. As soon as he came out, he twisted his body and crawled around the bamboo forest like a gust of wind. "I'm suffocating." Spring and summer were when insects were the most active. Being trapped in the bug pouch, he naturally felt very uncomfortable. Li Qingshan felt a bit ashamed. Ever since he entered the 100 Schools of Thought, he hadn't had a single day of leisure. During this time, he had been completely focused on the path of the sword and hadn't had time to care about his friend, Millipede. After letting Millipede move around for a while, he opened the bug pouch. Bear with it for now. I'll take you to eat some good food later. When they returned to the bamboo courtyard, Lu Chuanfeng said, "You're finally out. Give me 2,000 spirit stones." Li Qingshan said, "What 2,000 spirit stones?" Lu Chuanfeng laughed. "Of course it's the duel with Chu Tian. Lu Chongqing has already agreed. You have to thank me this time." Li Qingshan counted out 2,000 spirit stones and gave them to him. He asked curiously, "Why should I thank you?" It turned out that when word of Chu Tian's duel with Li Qingshan had reached the Confucian school, Lu Chongqing had originally disagreed. As the prefect of a prefecture, he could be considered a gentleman, and this matter concerned Chu Tian's safety. The two geniuses of the 100 Schools of Thought didn't want to have an internal dispute. Then Lu Chuanfeng gave full play to his talent for ridicule, proclaiming everywhere that Li Qingshan would win and Chu Tian would lose. How could Lu Chongqing bear to see him succeed? In a fit of anger, he agreed and set a date. Naturally, the bet had to be submitted to the 100 Schools of Thought in advance. Moreover, this matter also involved another clan within the 100 clans. When Li Qingshan heard this, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If the duel didn't work out, then it would be fine if they didn't fight. He didn't have any deep hatred with Chu Tian. In this aspect, Lu Chuanfeng was really powerful. During this time, Hao Pingyang and Zhang Lanqing also came to visit. Twice, she asked him why he didn't attend the lecture. However, seeing that Zhang Xian was cultivating his swordsmanship, Zhang Xian didn't disturb him and left. They also knew about the bet between Li Qingshan and Chu Tian. Right now, increasing their own strength was the most important thing, so they could only temporarily put artifact forging aside. Li Qingshan said, "Uncle Fu hasn't returned yet." Lu Chuanfeng said, "Senior brother sent a message back. The framework has basically been set up. The Cloud Wisp Society is about to open for business. When the time comes, we'll be invited to participate." Li Qingshan admired Sun Fubai's ability in such a large area, and with so many resources to be able to reach this step in 20 days was truly not simple. If he were to do this, he probably wouldn't be able to do it even in half a year. This wasn't a lack of intelligence, but a gap in experience and connections. It really was like having an old man at home was like having a treasure. Very good, but at the opening ceremony. I'm afraid I don't have time to attend it. I'm preparing to go into seclusion for a period of time. Seclusion. Lu Chuanfeng immediately understood that this was for the battle with Chu Tian. Li Qingshan had more to consider. Millipede was his friend, not a mount. He couldn't let his friend stay in the bug sack all day. However, Chu Tian's wager was also one of the reasons. His original plan was to slowly take medicinal pills while learning alchemy, accumulating more knowledge and resources to ensure that he could continuously refine medicinal pills. Now, however, he changed his mind. A lion should use its full strength when hunting a rabbit. Li Qingshan asked, "I heard you say that there's a cave abode for seclusion on the island, right?" There were many facilities on the island that chief disciples could use for free, and the cave abode for seclusion was one of them. Lu Chuanfeng said, "Can't you just go into seclusion here? The spiritual qi there isn't even as good as here." "I have my own plans." Li Qingshan brought him to Contention Island and found the instructor in charge of managing the cave abode. Seeing that it was two chief disciples who wanted to choose a place for seclusion, Li Qingshan was one thing, but En's name shook the 100 clans. How could the instructor dare to slight her? Fellow Taoists, are you going into seclusion separately or together? Together. Both of you, please follow me. The instructor didn't waste time and brought the two to a large hall. The floor shook and quickly sank. A huge hollow had been dug under Contention Island, separated into more than 10 levels. Each level had many cave abodes for seclusion for the disciples of various clans to cultivate. Each cave abode was tightly shut and separated by layers of formations. No aura could be sensed from inside. Li Qingshan sensed that the closer they got to the bottom, the denser the spiritual qi became. The surging spiritual qi blew upwards like the wind. It directly descended to the lowest level of the hollow, and just now it stopped steadily. The instructor handed a disc-shaped object to Li Qingshan. This is the key. This is the lowest level, and there's only one cave abode for seclusion. The spiritual qi formations are the best, and it's very spacious. Two people can cultivate inside without disturbing each other. If an ordinary disciple wanted to use it, it would cost a dozen or so spiritual stones every day. Li Qingshan said, I wonder if we can peek inside from the outside. The instructor said, that's impossible. Not only are there layers of formations here, there's also spiritual interference. Even family leader Lu's water mirror disc can't penetrate it. Not only can't we see through it, but people from the outside can't even enter. Once the cave abode is closed, it can only be opened from the inside. It can't be opened from the outside. That's not entirely true. There are ways to open it, but it's under very special circumstances. For example, the 100 schools of thought were attacked by external enemies, or you didn't pay the school fees you should have paid. Li Qingshan smiled and clasped his hands. Thank you for your guidance, instructor. Both of you are people with great futures. It's my honor to be able to help you. Please prepare your own food and water. If there's nothing else, I won't hold you up. Li Qingshan entered the cave abode and activated the key again. The stone door closed with a bang, and several formations began to operate, although the spiritual qi here couldn't compare to the formation on Cloud Wisp Island. It wasn't much worse. Moreover, it was safer and more secretive. Li Qingshan released Millipede and took out all kinds of food he bought from the 100 Flavors building as compensation. Tong and looked at each other and pinched the tip of her nose. Watch me defeat you with my sword qi after I come out of seclusion. Chapter 308. The news of the battle between the primary disciple of the School of Novels, Li Qingshan, and the genius with the 5 elements constitution, Chu Tian, had only just spread through the entire 100 schools of thought. The news of Li Qingshan and little and entering secluded cultivation kicked up another wave. Hua Chenglu clenched her fist. What an idiot! Yu Zijian complained. What's wrong with me? I wasn't talking about you. Many disciples sat on cushions in the surroundings, and they all looked over. Please be quiet. The two of you, reminded the professor who was currently teaching alchemy in front of the Taoist palace. Hua Qinglu stuck out her tongue. Just what was wrong with Li Qingshan? She really had warned him for nothing. However, upon further thought, that man's stubbornness had always been extraordinary. Otherwise, why would he have given up on the opportunity to curry favor with the Hua family and left so decisively? After the lesson, Yu Zijian wandered around Wuwei Island with Hua Chenglu. Yu Zijian said, that big brother Li might not necessarily lose. Isn't he in secluded cultivation? Back then, when she saw how overbearing Chu Tian was, she could not help but stand on Li Qingshan's side. Hua Chenglu said, what do you know? How can his cultivation speed compare to... She suppressed her voice. The reincarnated celestial Chu Tian, only that wretched demon little, and has a chance. Even if they were not heavenly meridians prodigies, reincarnated celestials' cultivation speed would still surpass regular cultivators. It was said that this was because the remnant comprehension of cultivation from their past lives remained in their hearts. As a result, they could often deal with bottlenecks that regular cultivators encountered with a flash of inspiration. This brat is going to lose face this time. If he chooses to fight Chu Tian immediately, he might even have a chance at victory. Secluded cultivation? Wang Pushi sneered. Hua Sengzan said, he can't be judged by normal standards. Since he's bold enough to agree to it, he's confident in victory. Since when did you think so highly of him? Wang Pushi was surprised. Hua Sengzan said, Old Wang, you're just biased, which is why you can't see his merits. Think about it. He went from the pine tree outside Qingyang City to the 100 schools of thought. How long did it take him? How many difficulties did he face? Has he ever lost? Wang Pushi was silent. All right, when the time comes, I'll bet on him. On Ansarava Island, the one-thought master had gone into secluded cultivation without even informing his primary disciple. He could only smile bitterly and let her be. Seclusion? If seclusion is useful, then what's the point of having geniuses? Chu Tian laughed heartily and said to the two girls beside him, Brother Tian is the best. He won't lose to that barbarian. More than 2 months later, there were still 2 hours before the duel in the military school's grand martial arena. Many cultivators stopped what they were doing. They had come to watch the battle. There were even a few family heads hiding in the VIP rooms. Naturally, Lu Chongqing and Lu Chuanfeng would be there. The slovenly Taoist was so angry that he wanted to see how Li Qingshan would make a fool of himself. In Wang Pushi's eyes, Li Qingshan was still a member of the Hawkwolf Guard at the end of the day. The other school leaders who had nothing to do with this also wanted to see just how much Chu Tian, who was said to be a reincarnated celestial, had grown. Li Qingshan obviously only played the role of a touchstone. However, from beginning to end, Li Qingshan did not appear. The door to the secluded dwelling on Contention Island did not open either. In the end, Han Anjuan declared Chu Tian to be the victor and handed him 4,000 spiritual stones. Chu Tian raised his head and laughed. He's smart. Otherwise, it'd be even uglier. I'll definitely take back what I've lost. Brother Tian is so powerful. You've subdued the enemy without even fighting. Lu Chongqing glanced at the pale-faced Lu Chuanfeng and sneered. Wang Pushi cursed aloud. All he knew was that he was out of his mind, which was why he would bet on Li Qingshan. If it was not the secluded dwelling, there was no special reason. He was tempted to go over and drag Li Qingshan out. He wasn't afraid of losing. It was just some inferior spiritual stones, but he couldn't lose like this. Hua Sengzan frowned. Qingshan is at a crucial point in his cultivation. He can't stop. Why can't he stop cultivating his fart chi? I think he's clearly scared. Scared? The great martial arts field was in an uproar. Those who lost spiritual stones cursed aloud, while those who one couldn't help but mock them. The so-called novelists had once again become the laughingstock of the 100 schools of thought. The slovenly Taoist priest rubbed his chin. That kid didn't look like someone who would avoid a fight. Could he have been infected by that coward Lu Chuanfeng? In the underground dwelling on Contention Island, Li Qingshan had indeed forgotten about the duel. Although little and remembered, he didn't remind him. Even if he did, Li Qingshan definitely wouldn't come out of seclusion right now. The progress of his cultivation had completely exceeded Li Qingshan's initial expectations. Originally, he planned on digesting most of the pills in his 100 treasures pouch before pushing the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression a step further. However, this step was not a small one. It took him to the edge of the second layer of the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression. He was only a step away from success. At this moment, the virtue accumulation pill he had won from Begonia and the pills Little N had obtained from the one thought master played a decisive role. By now, Li Qingshan had already ingested all the pills he could use for cultivation in his 100 treasures pouch. Only the virtue accumulation pill remained, which he swallowed before refining bit by bit. At a time like this, whether it was the 2,000 spiritual stones on the line or his personal glory, none of them could distract him at all. To him, these three abilities were like the path of white bone and great beauty to Little N. They were his foundation, while the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression was the foundation of his foundation. It was very likely for the second layer of the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression to be the key to opening the gates to Demon General. Once he took that step, Li Qingshan would be completely different. The world would be completely different. Time passed by slowly. Who knew how long it had been? Suddenly, resplendent, azure light rose up from Li Qingshan's body. The light actually vaguely formed the shape of a spirit turtle, shaking its head and wagging its tail. It was lifelike. Only when it filled the entire dwelling did it suddenly begin to shrink, shrinking into Li Qingshan's body, shrinking into the tiny spirit turtle's demon core. It was small, but it had grown larger than before. Li Qingshan opened his eyes. Light flowed through them. He felt like his heart was as still as water, extremely calm. He had finally reached the second layer of the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression. However, he was unable to understand how to break through to Demon General. However, this was within his expectations. Otherwise, undergoing the heavenly tribulation and becoming a Demon General in the 100 schools of thought would basically be insane. No matter how well the underground dwelling was sealed, it would not be able to conceal this aura. By then, he would be surrounded and beaten up by the various school leaders. However, the great door had already opened for him. He could vaguely see the endless scenery inside, and he placed a foot on the threshold. Right now, all he needed to do was pull his other foot back and step in. This process was not as easy as it sounded. Who knew how many cultivators had stagnated at the 10th layer, unable to take that step even after a decade? Who knew how many demons had lost their lives to the heavenly tribulation either? He needed to be as cautious as possible and accumulate even more resources to complete this crucial step in his life. No, his demon life. Even without experimenting, Li Qingshan could sense that even Foundation establishment cultivators would struggle to break through his spirit turtle's profound shell as long as they did not possess a wondrous treasure like Fu Qingjin or had a cultivation as high as the slovenly Taoist priest. Most importantly, he could continue practicing the two abilities of the ox demon and tiger demon that had stagnated. If he could reach the third layer for both of them, it would probably be very difficult for the spirit turtle at the second layer to suppress it. However, if he could only reach the third layer for the ox demon, there would be no problem. As for the ox demon's fist of great strength, its power would become more and more startling as he cultivated it. A tough body would be the most important bargaining chip against the heavenly tribulation. At this moment, Little N reminded Li Qingshan about the duel. Only then did Li Qingshan come to a realization. Looking at the time, it should already be summer outside. He gained a deeper understanding of the concept of time as a cultivator. It was no exaggeration to say that there was no sun or moon in the mountains. Although he felt that it was a slight pity, he did not take it to heart. If he missed it, then he missed it. He would let the kid gloat for now. Was he afraid that he would not be able to make up for it in the future? It was not like he had missed it, so there was no hurry. Then I won't continue. Li Qingshan glanced at the corner. Millipede had also curled up into a ball, absorbing the spiritual qi in the dwelling. He seemed to be even more focused on cultivation than him. This place was obviously more suited for his cultivation and recovery than the bug pouch. Millipede had once been the person with the highest cultivation here, so his understanding of the no time in the mountains was even deeper than Li Qingshan's. Little and nodded as well. Recently, her comprehension of the path of white bone and great beauty had reached a whole new level through her cultivation of the Guardian King's scripture of demon subdual. As for the cloud bookcase of the 7 lots, she needed to spend even more time peering and cultivating it bit by bit. Li Qingshan took out the high-quality cursive sword calligraphy once again. Although he had been focusing on his demonic cultivation, his qi practitioner cultivation was still at the 6th layer. However, this time he was completely confident. With his previous experience of refining the cursive sword calligraphy and his comprehension of the way of the sword, he did not spend too much effort refining it this time. He succeeded on his first try. Then, it was the most dangerous moment. The countercurrent sword qi was 10 times fiercer than before. At the same time, a sword that was as black as ink appeared in his mind once again. It danced like last time, but the terrifying sword intent it released was like countless needles as thin as a cow's hair, shooting out randomly. The release of sword intent last time only gave Li Qingshan some comprehension, giving him the urge to wield his sword. However, this time, Li Qingshan felt a stabbing pain in his head. He could not even focus. It went without saying that basically no qi practitioner could survive under these circumstances, with their minds in a mess and the countercurrent sword qi attacking them from all sides. However, Li Qingshan bellowed out, "The spirit turtle suppresses the seas." The spirit turtle suppresses the seas did not suppress the sea of qi first, but the sea of consciousness. In Li Qingshan's head, he visualized a boundless spirit turtle pressing down on the pitch-black sword. The terrifying sword intent immediately came to a halt. The power of the spirit turtle dominated everything. This was the greatest reason why Li Qingshan was bold enough to refine the cursive sword calligraphy. Chapter 309. Li Qingshan's mind cleared up. At the same time, the spirit turtle in his sea of qi suppressed all of the sword qi that flowed in reverse. Even with that being the case, several of his meridians showed signs of being ripped apart. He throbbed with pain. If he were a regular qi practitioner, these injuries would be extremely severe. He would need to seek treatment from the School of Medicine. However, Li Qingshan transformed slightly and unleashed his demon qi to wash away the remaining sword qi. Before long, these wounds gradually healed. As a great demon that was infinitely close to Demon General, his regenerative abilities were extremely great. As long as he had time, he could basically heal from any wounds. After healing, Li Qingshan immediately began to comprehend the path of the sword in the cursive sword calligraphy. Under the spirit turtle's control, he released the sword intent and force bit by bit. He slowly sensed and comprehended them. However, clearly, the difficulty had increased by quite a lot this time. Li Qingshan said, "Little, and teach me the sword style." Little and immediately stopped cultivating and studied it with him. Time flew by. No one cared. This time, it took much longer than last time. In the blink of an eye, 3 months had passed. Li Qingshan held the 2 scrolls of the cursive sword calligraphy at the same time and channeled his true qi into them. When the true qi turned into sharp sword qi and flowed back, it had already concealed its sharpness. It could no longer harm him. He had finally fully comprehended the sword Tao contained in the 2nd volume of the cursive sword calligraphy. At this moment, he wanted to merge the 2 volumes of the cursive sword calligraphy in his Dantian's Sea of Qi. The 2 strands of sword qi, one strong and one weak, converged in his sea of qi and began fighting. They did not seem to originate from the same source, but mortal enemies. Li Qingshan did not use the spirit turtle's method of qi suppression to forcefully suppress it. Instead, he used his willpower to control it. Gradually, the powerful strand of sword qi gained the upper hand, devouring the weak strand of sword qi. The two completely merged together, turning into 100 strands of extremely sharp sword qi. Because it was completely refined, the might of this strand of sword qi wasn't inferior to the top-grade cursive sword scripture. Moreover, it was like controlling one's arm, and it was even more miraculous. It was obvious that if one were to suddenly execute this move in a battle with another, then it would be completely useless. How many people would be able to withstand it? A ray of golden light appeared behind Li Qingshan. The huge Vajra sword slashed down from above. Li Qingshan put his fingers together like a sword and held them horizontally above his head. The Vajra sword and the sword qi clashed fiercely, creating a series of metallic clangs. As the Vajra sword pressed down bit by bit, Li Qingshan deflected it. "You're sneaking up on me again." In order to improve her control over the sword qi, Li Qingshan had asked Little and to launch sneak attacks on her at any time, so that the sword qi would be triggered when she sensed danger. This method was not bad for Li Qingshan, who was good at actual combat, but she seemed to be addicted to it. "Didn't you want to defeat me? With sword qi?" Little and giggled. He became one with his sword, and the Vajra sword transformed into a streak of golden light. It whizzed away. "Don't look down on me." Li Qingshan took out a low-grade spirit artifact, long sword, and swung it. The tips of the swords clashed. Li Qingshan roared, and the sword qi from his dantian poured endlessly into the sword. The Vajra sword shattered inch by inch. At the same time the long sword shattered, the Vajra golden body collapsed, revealing her petite body. He hugged her. He pinched her cheeks and tickled her. The door opened, and the chilly wind carried snowflakes onto the bamboo floor. The light from the snow also dyed the darkness. It was like the most beautiful landscape painting was embedded there. Of course, only cultivators could ignore the cold and appreciate it so leisurely. Lu Chuanfeng wore a set of green robes, currently bent over the table, and writing away. Whether it was the bitter cold or the scenery, nothing seemed to faze him at all. The Cloud Wisp Association had already begun to display startling effects. His heart for writing novels seemed to be ignited once more, crafting stories with great care. Of course, these stories no longer had any substance, but they were not elegant either. Li Qingshan's words had given him great inspiration. He now understood very well that what he wanted to conquer were not elegant people who could write poems. Without anyone's guidance, classic plots such as a young man falling off a cliff and finding a rare treasure, or a young lady eloping with a poor scholar, were all clearly written. After being embellished by storytellers and singers, they reached the ears of millions of commoners. The speed at which the power of faith gathered abruptly increased. Of course, this process was not a smooth one. There were many hesitations and struggles. In order to increase efficiency, he wrote many beginnings, then listened to the feedback from the Cloud Wisp Association. If he received approval, he would continue writing. If not, he would immediately change it, all for the benefit of the readers. Now, he was writing a novel that was halfway through its development. Among his many novels, this one had received the most recognition and support. The 4 words Master of Moon Breeze had also started to gain some fame. He had not been to the building for a long time. It was not because of Li Qingshan's reminder, but because he had no time at all. He was about to hand in the manuscript, and he had to give the storytellers time to familiarize themselves with the story. He wanted to write with all his might. If possible, he wanted to continue this story. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He was not fighting alone. He was not fighting for himself. The entire school of novels was reviving in his hands. Thud, thud, thud. Is anyone home? Lu Chuanfeng suddenly raised his head. Because his mind was still immersed in the story, his eyes were blank and somewhat wooden. However, he gradually saw the person standing in the corridor, blocking the light from the snow. It was the chief disciple he had been thinking about day and night, Li Qingshan. Beloved disciple, you're finally out. Lu Chuanfeng pounced on him. Li Qingshan pushed him away with a wave of his hand and called out to the snow, "Little, and you're here. Why did you go into seclusion for so long? Don't tell me you're really afraid of him. If you were afraid, you should have said so earlier. You caused me to lose so many spirit stones, He's already in the 7th level of Qi practitioner, and I heard that he's going to break through soon. It's really infuriating to compare oneself with others." Lu Chuanfeng poured tea and chattered on. Suddenly, he stopped and widened his eyes. You're in the 7th level of Qi practitioner. He finally sensed the aura emanating from Li Qingshan. Shockingly, he was in the 8th level of Qi practitioner. Indeed, Li Qingshan smiled slightly and placed the teacup in little An's hand. When I was practicing Qi, I had a small accident, so it took me some time. Lu Chuanfeng's face was filled with disbelief. What kind of accident could allow a Qi practitioner who had just reached the 6th level to reach the 7th level of Qi practitioner in just a few months? On the path of cultivation, the higher one went, the more difficult it would be. After condensing the sea of Qi, the remaining 3 meridians, the conception, governing, and Chong meridians, could be cultivated in 10 years, which would be considered fast. Then it would take another 10 years to open all 12 meridians and reach the peak of Qi practitioners, the 10th level of Qi practitioner. After that, there would be another 20 to 30 years to slowly comprehend the final step, or rather, the first step, foundation establishment. Reaching the 10th level of Qi practitioner before the age of 50 could be considered an elite, before the age of 40, a hero, and before the age of 30, a genius. This was the path that most talented Qi practitioners and even many foundation establishment cultivators walked. There was no shortage of geniuses like Hua Sengzan, but they were all famous geniuses. And Li Qingshan was only 17 years old. If he continued cultivating at this speed, he could easily join the ranks of geniuses. If he knew the real time that Li Qingshan had spent, he would probably be so shocked that his eyeballs would pop out. It had only been 3 months, not the 9 months that Lu Chuanfeng had thought. Although he could continuously absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, Qi practitioner didn't just need spiritual energy. Originally, he wouldn't have been able to reach the 7th level of Qi practitioner so quickly until he discovered another use of the sword Qi in his dantian. Chapter 310. After reaching the 6th level of Qi refining, converting spiritual energy into true Qi to attack his acupoints wasn't as easy as it had been in the beginning. At this moment, the sword Qi in his dantian gave Li Qingshan a huge inspiration. He tried to merge the sword Qi into his true Qi to forcefully open his meridians and attack his acupoints. He never imagined that he would actually succeed. His own true Qi was extremely pure, and with the help of the sword Qi in his dantian, he no longer faced any bottlenecks on the path of Qi refining. As expected, the cursive sword tome was extraordinary. Lu Chuanfeng watched as Li Qingshan took a step out of the corridor, the cloud rapidly gathering beneath his feet. The speed at which he executed his magical technique was astonishing. "Where are you going?" "To find Chu Tian, of course. It's best if I take back those spirit stones." Li Qingshan waved his hand without even turning his head. Little and leapt onto the cloud. "I'll let you have 3 moves. With a whoosh, the cloud left a long tail behind it as it sped away. On the Confucian island of virtuous virtue, the Buddhists had a forest of pagodas, while the Confucians had a forest of steels. On the Confucian island of virtuous virtue, the Buddhists had a forest of pagodas, while the Confucians had a forest of steels. Chu Tian and a group of Confucian disciples sat in front of a large stele, impatiently listening to the professor recount the past. What dogs hit virtuous virtue? How could he compare to a celestial? Chu Tian watched as the professor suddenly stopped talking and looked behind him. When he turned his head, his eyes went wide. He saw Li Qingshan leaning against a stone stele, smiling at him. He didn't seem depressed or resentful because of his defeat. In fact, he even waved his hand as if he were greeting an old friend. Furthermore, he was also in the 7th level of qi refining, just like him. This greatly disappointed Chu Tian, who had hoped to see Li Qingshan look like a defeated dog. Ignoring the fact that he was in the middle of a lecture, he suddenly stood up. Li Qingshan, it's about time. Let's call it a day. The professor looked up at the sky. He didn't want to offend a genius like Chu Tian, who was currently in the limelight. In any case, not many people were willing to listen. The Confucian disciples gathered around Chu Tian and gazed at Li Qingshan nearby. Their gazes were filled with contempt and disdain. Chapter 46. I'll let you have 3 moves. Chu Tian said, You still dare to come? Li Qingshan said, Why wouldn't I dare? What do you want? Could it be that you're here to admit defeat? That's more like a man calling me boss. From now on, have you ever beaten me? Li Qingshan's interruption enraged Chu Tian. He pointed at Li Qingshan. Don't think that I can't do anything to you just because you're acting like a shameless dog. Li Qingshan said, How about it? Do you want me to give you a chance and let you win? So it's like that. All right, I agree. I'm just afraid that you'll run away with your tail between your legs again. Chu Tian sneered. The Confucian disciples roared with laughter. Li Qingshan stretched out 4 fingers and said, This time, let's bet this number. For 1,000 spiritual stones. The laughter stopped. The Confucian disciples who came to listen to this lecture were all new disciples. In their entire lives, they had never seen so many spirit stones. They couldn't help but be frightened by this number. Chu Tian was also stunned. Li Qingshan said, What? Don't you have that many spirit stones? Do you want me to lend them to you? All right. Since you want to give me spirit stones, how could I not agree? Chu Tian sneered. His heart was filled with wild joy. He was filled with absolute confidence. He had already comprehended the 5 elements grand palm to an extremely deep level because he cultivated 5 types of true qi. The 5 elements supported each other. His true qi was more than 10 times that of an ordinary 7th layer qi practitioner. How could he lose? The same place and time. Let's set it to 3 days from now. Otherwise, we'll run into some trouble and let a villain get carried away. This time, I'll make you accept your defeat wholeheartedly. Chu Tian said fiercely. Not only did he want to win, he wanted to ruthlessly humiliate Li Qingshan. He wanted him to understand the difference between a mortal and a genius. 3 days later, on the great martial arts field of the School of the Military. This was Li Qingshan's first time coming to War Island. The great martial arts field was like a giant wrestling ring. However, there weren't any densely packed seats. Instead, there were tall platforms of different heights erected in the surroundings. These were the places to watch the martial arts. From afar, the levels were distinct and rather rhythmic. There wasn't the slightest bit of disorder. It was clearly the work of the School of Moism's architects. Chu Tian stood with his hands behind his back. His white clothes fluttered in the wind. Although he couldn't be considered handsome, he was filled with a powerful aura in the eyes of the bystanders. The surrounding tall platforms were filled with people. Such a grand bet had already attracted the attention of the entire 100 schools of thought. Figures could also be vaguely seen standing on the few VIP seats at the highest point. Wang Puxi looked up at the sun. The time was almost here. However, Li Qingshan hadn't arrived yet. The other spectator stands were in a heated discussion. On one of the tall platforms, a group of legalist disciples were either sitting or standing. Among them, there was no lack of familiar faces that Li Qingshan recognized. Why isn't that guy here yet? Don't tell me he's scared again. He's giving away several thousand spiritual stones in a single go. Why haven't I encountered a good opponent like him before? Stop talking. He's the primary disciple of the School of Novels. You can't afford to offend him. Wu Zhen said extremely seriously. It led to a series of laughter. Wu Zhen smiled too. He thought he was complacent. Rongji, how much did you bet this time? Qian Rongji said, the same as last time. The same? You won't. Last time, Qian Rongji had bet on Li Qingshan and lost quite a lot of spiritual stones, so Wu Zhen had mocked Li Qingshan greatly. He never thought she would bet like that again this time, which left Wu Zhen rather annoyed. Right now, she had quite a few pursuers in the 100 schools of thought. She even seemed to have a rather ambiguous relationship with the genius Chu Tian, but she remained distant from him the entire time. Wang Puxi lowered his head and asked Hua Sengzan beside him, how much did you bet this time? Hua Sengzan sat on the edge of the stands and extended 2 fingers without even looking back. 2,000. I have to make up for what I lost last time. Wang Puxi said, you trust him that much? Hua Sengzan smiled. I lost this time, but I'll bet 4,000 next time. He's coming. He's coming. There were calls from below, and everyone raised their heads. A cloud with a long tail flew over, sweeping past a tall tower. Little and leapt off and landed beside the One Thought Master. The One Thought Master looked at his primary disciple. He had not seen in quite some time with a bitter smile, but he had no idea whether to criticize or praise him. At least there was someone beside him now. It was an unwritten rule among the 100 schools of thought that only the primary disciple could stand beside the school leader. Although the highest platform was very empty, there could not be more than 2 people on it at most. Hua Sengzan said, Old Wang, were you this fast in the past? My talent in the water element is only at the B level. Wang Puxi could use the ice hell, so he was obviously familiar with the most practical water element technique. However, even he had not been this fast when he was at the 10th layer. This speed doesn't seem like it's just high. Hua Sengzan said in thought. The formations for testing elemental attributes only targeted Qi practitioners. High A was already an extremely rare talent, so there was no point in setting it any higher. After reaching the 2nd layer of the Spirit Turtle's method of Qi suppression, Li Qingshan's senses for the water element had increased drastically, which was why he could sense the snow falling outside from his dwelling in seclusion. Just like the Ox Demon's fist of great strength and the Tiger Demon's fist of bone forging, the Spirit Turtle's method of Qi suppression gradually changed his constitution. Using a human formation to test the water element of a Spirit Turtle was just a joke, wasn't it? The Spirit Turtle was water itself. No, it was the ruler of water. After letting go of little, and the cloud stabbed down. It did not slow down at all, rushing straight towards the ground. With a boom, the cloud dispersed and dust rose into the air. Yu Zijian felt her right hand tighten. She saw that Hua Qinglu was extremely nervous. Are you worried about him? Yu Zijian asked softly. Idiot, I bet a lot of spiritual stones. Hua Qinglu stared into the dust and could vaguely make out a figure standing upright. Only then did she stop worrying. When the dust dispersed, Li Qingshan stood with his arms crossed. He smiled faintly, and his bronze face radiated with great confidence. His green robes, which were supposed to be very elegant, gave off a strong aura when he wore them. At this moment, the timing was perfect. The host of the duel, the military spider, Han Anjuan, said, "During the duel, no pills, talismans, puppets, or spiritual stones are allowed. Once you break the rules, you'll be judged as having lost immediately." This was the rule of the duels of the academy. The duelists mostly competed in terms of martial arts and skill, increasing the intensity of the competition. It was not a battle to the death. Once they used external objects, it would become a pointless battle of attrition, wasting tremendous resources for nothing. This was not something the academy approved of. The reason why the school leader, Han Anjuan, had been chosen as the referee was to ensure that the duel could be stopped at crucial moments and avoid casualties. After a simple explanation of the rules, Han Anjuan cut right to the chase. "Do you have any objections?" No. Begin." The giant lumberman, Wood Kuei, wielded a huge hammer and struck the gong that was even taller than him. A thunderous sound rang through the entire island, startling the birds. The duel began. Chu Tian said, "And I thought you were going to avoid the battle again." "Humph, in consideration of how many spiritual stones you've given me. Let's begin. I'll give you 3 moves." Swish, swish, swish. Without another word, Li Qingshan shot out 3 water arrows, but they did not even penetrate Chu Tian's protective true qi. Water techniques were not known for their offensive power, and he did not even use his full strength. Courtesy demands reciprocity. I'll give you 3 moves as well. Make your move. Chu Tian was furious. He had never thought he would still dare to play tricks on him. Sharp golden light lit up in his hand, and like a blade, he slashed out. He bellowed, "Golden crescent slash!" An extremely sharp, half-moon-shaped golden light whizzed through the air. One move. Li Qingshan took half a step back and naturally moved his body to the side. The golden crescent slash brushed past him, but he was completely unharmed. Before he could even turn around, he felt a tremor beneath his feet. Single log. Chu Tian's voice rang out just now. His right foot flickered with green light as he stomped on the ground. A huge log broke out of the ground with a boom, rushing into the air. 2 moves. Li Qingshan leapt up gently and stomped down. The huge log shattered with a boom. Waves of heat rushed over, and the flames dyed Li Qingshan's face red. Chapter 3:11. The stands fell silent. Chu Tian's strength. Everyone was shocked. Not only did the 3 moves contain metal, wood, and fire elemental techniques, and they were startlingly powerful. If it was them, they would probably be killed in the first move. Being in such a flame, it would be difficult for them to escape death. Against an opponent like that, how could they win? And they even pretended to let him take 3 moves. They were basically digging their own graves. Yu Zijian felt her hand ache from the grip. Hua Qinglu panicked. "Are you worried about your spiritual stones?" "I'm worried about him." Hua Qinglu suddenly understood. Her face reddened. "Oh my, you're still in the mood to joke around. Don't worry. Qinglu, he doesn't seem like someone who will be defeated by a move like that." Yu Zijian patted Hua Qinglu's hand. "On Li Qing, mountain." That person's shadow seemed to appear. It was an unyielding will. Lu Chongqing smiled. Chu Tian's temperament was still a little lacking, but his strength was unquestionable. Not only was his true chi 10 times that of regular people, he also used the principle of mutual generation of the 5 elements. The power of his techniques was extremely great too. Li Qingshan wanted to fight him without knowing his limits. But he was asking for trouble. If he used this move, even if he didn't die, he would be heavily injured. He couldn't fight anymore, right? Chu Tian laughed aloud, just like the last duel. Just you. Are you worthy of letting me take 3 moves? General Han, in this battle, I've won, haven't I? Han Anjuan stood on a high platform not far away. He stood like a stone statue, as if he didn't hear what Chu Tian said. Suddenly, he raised his hand. He pointed at the raging fire. Chu Tian frowned. His pupils constricted. Li Qingshan stood unscathed in the sea of fire. He didn't even change his posture. His entire body, it was shrouded in an oval light blue screen. No matter how much the raging flames attacked, none of them moved an inch. Li Qingshan said, 3 moves. Water curtain. This was one of the many water spells. He was one of the more famous ones. It was a defensive spell. It could neutralize power and counteract attacks. However, the water screen art of a 7th layer chi practitioner was nothing. How could it resist Chu Tian's raging flame bird? Not just Chu Tian. Even Lu Zhongqing could not figure it out. Li Qingshan laughed and said, "What do you think? Do you want me to let you have another 3 moves? Since you're the one who doesn't know what's good for you, don't blame me for being merciless." Chu Tian was enraged. His hands formed a seal. It was extremely fast. It was as if a few pairs of hands had appeared out of thin air. Li Qingshan did not take the opportunity to attack. He just crossed his arms and watched. It was as if he had really made up his mind. He was going to let him have another 3 moves. Even the heads of the various families felt that he was being too arrogant, but in his heart, he had other plans. Chu Tian withdrew his hands. All the illusions disappeared, and in front of his chest, he suddenly slapped the ground. An incredible loud roar. The onlookers felt that the high platform under their feet seemed to be trembling slightly. It was as if there was an earthquake. A crack instantly appeared between Chu Tian's hands. It spread to the feet of Li Qingshan. A giant, earthy, yellow palm stretched out from the ground. It grabbed at Li Qingshan. 5 thick fingers. It was as if a stone pillar was clamping over. Li Qingshan jumped up. He rode on the clouds. He flew around the field. He looked down. The entire martial arts field was covered in cracks. The earthy yellow arm stretched out from the ground. It reached into the sky. Then it was pressed to the ground. A vague human figure borrowed the force to stand up. It was like a giant that had slept for 1,000 years. It was awakened by the battle outside. Earth and rocks flowed down from its body. A complete humanoid figure appeared. It was 100 feet tall. It cast a huge shadow. It even covered many of the high platforms. Everyone on the viewing platform was shocked. What spell is this? Earth Strongman. Earth Elder Huang's eyes narrowed into a line. What? This is the Earth Strongman. Beside Earth Elder Huang stood a tanned and simple young man. He cried out in surprise, because he also knew this spell, and he was at the 10th level of Qi refinement. Earth Strongman. It was an Earth element spell. As long as one cultivated Earth true Qi, they could use it. But if it was used by an ordinary little Qi refinement cultivator, it was only the size of a human. A high-level Qi refinement cultivator, they might be able to summon one that was 20 to 30 feet tall. But such a tall Earth Strongman, it had already surpassed the understanding of ordinary Qi refinement cultivators. They couldn't figure out what spell this was. The power of the spell It was basically determined by three factors: innate attributes, the amount of true qi, as well as the study and understanding of the spell itself. Chu Tian was in these three factors. They were undoubtedly the best, especially in the last point, with the advantage of being a reincarnated deva. Regarding the use of spells, it was almost self-taught. He was born with knowledge. Even the head disciple of the agricultural school couldn't compare to him. After all, this was an era of peace. Ordinary qi refinement cultivators wouldn't spend too much effort on spells. Chu Tian stood on the shoulder of the earth strongman. He gazed at Li Qingshan from above. You want to admit defeat now? It's too late. I'm going to kill you. No one can save you. Extremely arrogant words. But no one felt that he was boasting. Such a huge creature. It carried thousands of kilograms of earth and stone. It punched down. Protective true qi and defensive spells were all useless. He was instantly smashed into meat paste. It was too late for others to save him. This battle had unknowingly happened. It had already turned into a life and death battle. Han Anjuan's eyelashes trembled. The head disciple of the military school, Han Tie, said, "General." Han Anjuan said, "Let him kill." Chu Tian laughed wildly. He controlled the earth strongman. He stretched out his huge hand to grab Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan rode a cloud. It was extremely thrilling. He flew out from between the giant fingers. His vision darkened. The other hand was already smashing down. The cloud quickly fell. Only then did he avoid the punch. There was a loud bang. The earth strongman's fist heavily hit the ground. A visible shockwave. It spread in all directions. Wherever it passed, thousands of tons of earth and stone jumped. Some of the qi refinement cultivators on the platform. They were so scared that they almost ran away. A screen of light appeared. Hundreds of stone pillars on the platform. It formed a semicircular screen of light. It covered the entire great martial arts stage. The shockwave dissipated. A huge crater was left on the ground. Its power made everyone speechless. Was this really a spell cast by a seventh-layer qi refinement cultivator? The earth strongman raised its arm. It could almost grab every corner of the great martial arts stage. And there was no vital point to speak of. Li Qingshan rode a cloud, just like a flying insect. He weaved in and out of the way. He narrowly avoided the grabs of the earthen strongman again and again. Chu Tian laughed loudly. What? You only know how to run? Or do you want to consume my true qi? I might as well tell you, I am the earth strongman. Once it was born, it uses the earth as its foundation. Its power is endless. 12 moves. Chu Tian was startled. What did you say? Li Qingshan laughed. Going easy on you. The sloppy Taoist laughed. He drank a mouthful of wine. This kid is still so arrogant. I like it. What a pity. Fuck you. Chu Tian was furious. The earth strongman opened its huge mouth. It let out a soundless roar. It moved its feet like an earthquake. It opened its arms. It pounced towards Li Qingshan. A huge shadow covered him. Li Qingshan felt like a mountain was falling towards him. The smile on his face didn't change. Since you want to play, then I'll play with you. Boom. The two huge palms clapped together heavily. The clouds dissipated. Hua Chunlu cried out in shock. This time, wasn't Li Qingshan dead for sure? Why didn't the referee, Han Anjuan, do anything? Was he really going to watch Li Qingshan die? Chu Tian said, I told you. I want to kill you. No one. The earth strongman opened its hands. There was nothing inside. There was only a pool of water. Water incarnation technique. Water condensation technique. It could confuse the real from the fake. In the field, sounds of surprise rose. A shadow covered Chu Tian. Chu Tian didn't care. At this height, the only thing that could block the light was the clouds. Chu Tian saw many Qi practitioners pointing behind them in surprise. He suddenly turned around. He saw the cloud. A cloud giant even taller than the Earth Strongman. His left hand grabbed the Earth Strongman's shoulder. His right hand clenched into a fist. It fiercely hit the Earth Strongman's face. The Earth Strongman staggered backwards. It fell heavily to the ground. It hit the light screen that covered the martial arts field. A large part of the Earth Strongman's face caved in, revealing the soil and rocks inside. It poured down. This punch was supposed to hit Chu Tian on the Earth Strongman's shoulder. But his reaction wasn't slow. He dodged it. Li Qingshan sat on the cloud giant's shoulder. He said, "What a coincidence. I also know similar spells." During the time he was in seclusion, Li Qingshan didn't just practice Qi. He also tried to practice the spells that came with the Gui water condensing Qi method. And once he practiced, he felt different. These spells that originally required him to spend a lot of time to understand and master. Suddenly, he didn't have any difficulties. As long as he learned a little, he could use them. And the effect was excellent. He didn't become a genius overnight. This had nothing to do with comprehension. It was instinct, like how fish can swim, birds can fly, controlling all the water spirits in the world. This was the instinct of the spirit turtle, the change that the spirit turtle sea suppression method brought to him, almost the essence. So he stayed in the underground cave. He learned all the dozen or so water spells. 3 days before the duel, Li Qingshan didn't stay idle. He asked Lu Chuanfeng to find some more powerful spells, water spells that were suitable for duels. Lu Chuanfeng wasn't doing well, but he was still the head of a family. Senior and junior brothers sold these things. The dragon's horns, scales, claws, and teeth were all formed from flowing water. Waterfall dragon. This was the most destructive technique Li Qingshan had grasped so far. The water dragon bit the fire bird and rushed into the sky, slamming heavily against the screen of light. The screen seemed to shake. Chu Tian looked down in shock and saw Li Qingshan standing between the dragon's horns. The azure water swirled around his robe, but he wasn't wet at all. He wore a faint smile on his face, as if he were laughing at his powerlessness. Chu Tian gritted his teeth and roared inwardly, "How dare you laugh at me? How dare you, a mere mortal, laugh at me? I'm a celestial." Flames rose from the firebird's body as it pecked the dragon's head, breaking its horns. Its 2 claws tore through the dragon's scales. The water that contained the water dragon's life force poured down, but was evaporated before it could reach the ground. The waterfall dragon coiled around the firebird and pierced its claws deep into its body. Feathers fell from the sky and turned to ashes. With a sizzling sound, a large cloud of steam spread out. On the ground, the Cloud Ridge Giant and the Earthen Strongman were still waving their fists. Many of the Qi practitioners on the spectator stands had their mouths wide open, as if they had been struck dumb. It was as if they were on a primordial battlefield. In the sky, divine beasts rode on water and fire, while on the ground, giants fought endlessly with spears in their hands. There were also many people who clenched their fists and made up their minds to focus on cultivation. Qi practitioners of this era rarely got to see battles between cultivators above the foundation establishment stage. This kind of battle was a huge blow to their minds. Lu Chongqing looked around the spectator stands and saw everyone's expressions. No matter who won or lost, this battle was a good thing for the 100 schools of thought. It would allow the disciples who were used to peace to see what a real battle of magical power was like. It seemed that he needed to hold more duels like this in the future. Based on the information he had recently received, he could vaguely smell the scent of war. The outcome of this battle had been obvious from the beginning. It all depended on when Chu Tian would give up on his meaningless arrogance. As the dragon and the bird fought, Li Qingshan and Chu Tian were closer than ever. They could clearly see the anger and smiles on each other's faces. Li Qingshan! Chu Tian roared as he charged toward Li Qingshan on the back of the bird. 5-colored true energy appeared around him, forming a giant 5-colored hand that slammed down toward Li Qingshan. Palm of the 5 elements. Li Qingshan stood on the dragon's head and rushed into the air. The true energy in his sea of qi surged, fusing it all into the punch. Like a tsunami, he punched out. Lu Chongqing said, "The outcome has been determined." The fist and palm collided, and the water dispersed. At this moment, the water dragon that was locked in a stalemate with the fire bird dispersed as well, evaporating into surging steam. Although the Cloud Ridge Giant had gained the upper hand in close combat with the Earthen Strongman, dispersing most of the Earthen Strongman, its body had been greatly depleted. Both of them were only around 10 or 20 feet tall. They could no longer attract attention, much less decide the outcome of the battle. All everyone saw was Li Qingshan rapidly fall down, plunging into the mist and vanishing. Li Qingshan had lost. His full-powered punch could not stop Chu Tian's cultivation method, the palm of the 5 elements. Hua Qinglu suddenly felt sad. Indeed, no matter how hard ordinary people worked, they could never defeat a genius, let alone a reincarnated celestial like Chu Tian. Many Qi practitioners on the other platforms felt gloomy as well. Chapter 3:14. Qingshan. How Pingyang and Zhang Lanqing both paled in fright when they saw Li Qingshan fall from the sky. Isha relaxed instead. He looked at Han Anjuan on the platform in the distance. As long as he did not interfere, it would be best if Chu Tian could kill Li Qingshan and prevent any future problems. Yeah, the outcome has already been determined. Why don't you hurry up and separate them? Chu Tian wants to kill Li Qingshan, Hua Qinglu said in a hurry and grabbed Han Anjuan's sleeve. The Han family and the Hua family had been friends for generations, and they did not follow the teachings of Confucianism, so they did not have much etiquette. Han Anjuan said, "Let him kill him." Hua Qinglu turned to Han Tie and said, "Tie." However, Han Tie seemed to be carved from the same mold as Han Anjuan. Even the words he spoke were exactly the same, which made Hua Qinglu so angry that she stomped her foot. She arrived on the platform where Wang Puxi and Hua Sengzan stood, only to see Wang Puxi staring straight at the center of the ring as if he was stunned. Just when she was about to speak, Hua Sengzan pointed. "Look, what are you looking at?" Hua Qinglu looked over with a frown. All she saw was that the barrier of light had already dispersed, and the rolling mist gradually drifted away. Cold light flowed on the 3-foot-long sword, extending along the straight ridge to the 2 ends. One end disappeared into the black dragon's mouth. It was the blade. The dragon's body coiled into the hilt, held in a powerful hand. Li Qingshan leaned forward as if he had poured all of his strength into the sword. He murmured, "If I want to kill you, I only need a single strike." The other end had completely sunk into Chu Tian's back. Chu Tian's face twisted from pain and fear. He did his best to turn around. His eyes widened in disbelief, as if he wanted to say something, but blood gushed out first. The sword qi was currently destroying his organs. As long as Li Qingshan twisted the sword gently or swung it horizontally, Chu Tian would be a dead man. No matter how great a genius he would not be able to escape the fate of death. However, Li Qingshan's hand didn't move at all. It wasn't that he didn't want to move, but he never showed mercy when it came to killing. Her other hand was white as snow. He pinched the blade with 3 fingers and cut off the killing intent. Lu Zhongqing stood between Li Qingshan and Chu Tian. His brows were firmly furrowed, still filled with shock. He had never imagined that Chu Tian would actually lose, and lose so quickly that he was almost unable to rescue him in time and died in the Grand Martial practice grounds. Li Qingshan really wanted to try it on his own. Could he break free from the shackles of these 3 fingers? He killed Chu Tian with his sword. However, this thought only lasted for a moment before he let go of the sword hilt and cupped his hands towards Lu Zhongqing. Patriarch Lu, long time no see. Outside the Grand Martial Arts arena, the absolute silence turned into an uproar. What was going on? At that moment, what the hell happened? The pervading clouds didn't affect Chu Tian's keen senses, and he immediately found Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan was half kneeling on the ground, seemingly injured. Chu Tian wanted to say a few words to humiliate Li Qingshan, but he thought that Han Anjuan might intervene. He swallowed his words and went straight up. With a ruthless face, he slapped down with his palm. With a puff, Li Qingshan was smashed into pieces by the 5 elements palm print, turning into a pool of water. Humph! A deathbed struggle. Chu Tian was mildly surprised, but he did not mind it too much. After using so many techniques, Li Qingshan's true qi had definitely been depleted much more than his. Now that he had taken a palm strike from him, Li Qingshan was like a toothless tiger. He posed no threat at all. This thought was cut off by an extremely terrifying sword intent behind Chu Tian. As the clouds churned, a tall figure could be seen approaching at high speed. Murderous, intent sword into the sky, light and shadow twisted, and Li Qingshan's figure appeared. His body was like a tiger, and his gaze was like a dragon. 5 elements protection. It was too late to turn around. The 5-colored palm returned to Chu Tian's body, turning into an oval 5-colored light shield. 5 colors floated and fluctuated, and 5 kinds of power twisted and blended. It contained the principle of the 5 elements restraining each other. Water came with earth, wood came with metal. Its defensive ability was far better than ordinary protective spells. This was what Qian Rongji told Li Qingshan. In the silent night bamboo forest, mottled light and shadow, Qian Rongji's red lips opened slightly, and she explained the power of the 5 elements palm print. If you can't break through his 5 elements protection, you definitely won't be able to defeat him. I will win. Li Qingshan simply stated this fact, although he was not confident that he could pierce through the 5-colored light shield. The path of fighting and killing had never been about the amount of true qi or the strength of magical arts. Therefore, his provocation, his ridicule, his dominance, and his defeat were all in preparation for this moment. After a fierce battle, Chu Tian also consumed a lot of true qi, and his mood was extremely relaxed. So Li Qingshan used the glaze invisibility mirror and instantly hid all his aura and used the water transformation incarnation as bait. It was all for this sword. Without hesitation, Li Qingshan integrated the 100-sword qi in his dantian into this sword. The 100-sword qi collided with the 5-colored light shield, and there was a sound like glass shattering. The tip of the sword tasted blood, and the sword qi crazily rushed into Chu Tian's body. Victory or defeat was in the blink of an eye. Lu Zhongqing took a deep look at Li Qingshan and patted Chu Tian's chest. An unstoppable righteousness rushed into Chu Tian's body and forced the sword out. The sword shattered in the air. Li Qingshan rubbed his chest. Chu Tian's palm of the 5 elements truly was impressive. Even now, his arm and chest still ached slightly. If it were not for his inhumanly tough body, It really would have been difficult to say who would emerge victorious. Lu Zhongqing's frown deepened. He had intended to force out all of the sword qi, but the sharpness of the sword qi had far surpassed his initial expectations. It was difficult for it to remain under his righteous aura. Chu Tian's cultivation would probably be greatly damaged after suffering such a serious injury. Lu Chongqing looked up at Han Anjuan, questioning why the judge did not stop the situation midway. As the leader of the military school, his reaction speed was definitely much faster than his, and he would not let Chu Tian suffer such a serious injury. I've already said it. With a swish, Han Anjuan vanished from the platform and appeared before Li Qingshan, proving that he possessed this ability. Hua Qinglu suddenly understood what Han Anjuan meant. Let him kill him was not for Chu Tian to kill Li Qingshan, but for Li Qingshan to kill Chu Tian. He would not interfere at all. Lu Chongqing let out a long sigh. Chu Tian was far too good at offending people. Han Anjuan's original responsibility was to prevent any injuries or deaths from the duel. Chu Tian's shout, "If I want to kill you, no one can stop me," was basically a slap to the face. Han Anjuan handed the 8,000 spiritual stones to Li Qingshan and even patted him on the shoulder. He said, "You've done well, but your battle is still lacking. You can come to my school of the military in the future to take a look." This made all the spectating military disciples widen their eyes. They had never heard their school leader praise a person like this, let alone speak so much in one go. This was basically a supreme honor. He had already gained the acknowledgement of the school of the military. Han Anjuan had fought for many years, so he possessed a sharp sense for all battles. When Chu Tian made a ruckus about killing Li Qingshan, he had already guessed the outcome. This was all because of the difference in their states. One was arrogant and conceited, eager to destroy his opponent. The other was extremely calm and carried out his actions in an orderly manner. There were far too many examples like this in the countless battles where the weak triumphed over the strong. Since the calm was bold enough to take the initiative to challenge the strong, they definitely had a certain level of confidence. Those who calculate victory before the battle have to calculate too much. Those who fail to calculate victory before the battle have to calculate too little. Those who fail to calculate too much will win, and those who fail to calculate too little will lose, let alone those who fail to calculate at all. Afterwards, Han Anjuan seemed to be admiring a classic battle. Li Qingshan's army was nowhere near his opponents. First, he harassed the enemy from the flank, then faced them head-on and provoked them. In the end, he feigned defeat to lure the enemy into a hopeless situation. 300 sacrificial soldiers whistled out, charging straight into the main tent and beheading their general. He couldn't say anything to praise the precision of his calculations. Li Qingshan respectfully said, "Yes, General." Although Han Anjuan's cultivation was not the highest among the various school heads, he believed that if there really was a chaotic battle, this person in front of him would definitely be the last one to survive. Han Anjuan loudly announced, "This battle is over. Li Qingshan is victorious." Clang! The giant lumberman, Wood Kuei, struck the gong, announcing the end of the duel. Cheers rang out from the stands, loudly shouting the name Li Qingshan. Even quite a few Confucian disciples joined in. This was not just Li Qingshan's contribution. Chu Tian had spent the past few months in the 100 schools of thought, flirting with female cultivators and bossing around male cultivators. The moment he opened his mouth, he would say that he was a genius, and the next, he would say that he was a genius. He was truly ridiculing them, but they couldn't do anything to him, so they took this opportunity to explode out. Hao Pingyang raised his arms and shouted the loudest. Zhang Lanqing clenched his fists excitedly. In a corner, He Yisher's face was ashen. The two girls who were following Chu Tian staggered over and wept beside Chu Tian. Brother Tian, what's wrong, Brother Tian? I refuse to accept this. I refuse to accept this. You despicable bastard. I didn't lose. I didn't lose. Chu Tian suddenly returned to his senses. His eyes were bloodshot as he glared at Li Qingshan, as if he still wanted to fight him. He was extremely reluctant to accept this. He had not used that item yet. He still had a powerful trump card that he had not taken out. As long as he took it out, Li Qingshan definitely would not be his opponent. Firstly, he did not want to expose that item. And secondly, he was confident that he could deal with Li Qingshan with techniques. Who would have thought that the tables would turn so violently and so quickly? He was like a general who had been killed by a sacrificial soldier. He was still talking about the army of 100,000 that he had yet to mobilize, yet his head had already flown into the air, dying with his eyes wide open. Yes, Brother Tian, you haven't lost. No, you've lost. Qian Rongji interrupted. Rongji, you... Chu Tian was stunned. In the past few days, he had expressed his goodwill to Qian Rongji plenty of times. Qian Rongji was not like other female cultivators, who disliked him for having so many women around him. He thought they were already friends. Qian Rongji, you bitch, a young girl cursed. However, Qian Rongji did not look at them. She crouched down and held Chu Tian's hand. Her eyes were filled with motherly pity, as if she felt sorry for him from the bottom of her heart. She said softly, "Little Tian, everyone loses. It's fine if you lose once, as long as you can stand up again. Get some sleep first." Chu Tian felt a surge of warmth from the bottom of his heart. Her gaze was so gentle, as if it could soothe all pain in his heart. There was no mockery, no disdain, only pity. Right now, she was the most beautiful woman in his heart. You're tuning in to the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.